Good afternoon, everybody. It is 4 o'clock here in Los Angeles. Let's go ahead and get started with our lesson for today. Our lesson is algebra. Algebra is without a doubt the second most important quant lesson of the entire course. Again, potentially tied with arithmetic for first place. I really want to make sure you understand that to start. I think a lot of people disrespect algebra and they do so at their own peril down the road. Don't be one of them. Don't regret week 2 and not taking the time and attention that you need to get it done correctly. Now, why is Al Gore kind of giving you the big old thumbs up? The theme of algebra, according to the authors, is essentially one of an inconvenient truth. The idea there is they give you truth, factual information, but they don't really give it to you in a convenient way, and you got to make it convenient. And how do you do that? A number of ways. Learning how to simplify, learning how to solve, sometimes making your math look like their math. And so we'll go through all of these in turn. We'll start off with the basics of basics, the toolkit. Probably spend the first hour talking tools. Then an hour or two we'll get into the world of exponents and roots. It's not a question of if you will be seeing them on test day, but honestly, how many. Then we'll kind of finish out the day with the quadratic equations, essentially equations involving exponents, some common algebraic equations, and of course finishing out the day with some inequalities. So with that, let's jump right into the toolkit itself. Now, in the world of algebra, depending on if you have an expression or an equation, you have different tools that are available to you. Some of these tools are very expression only, some of these tools are very equation only, and some of them can go either way. So we're going to start off with the expressions and start to work our way into the world of equations. And as a reminder, in essence, an expression just doesn't have an equal sign, but anytime we say equations in this first hour, understand that that is applicable as well to the world of inequalities, which has essentially not an equal sign, but an inequality sign. But that's important because it renders it into having two different sides. So the first tool that we're going to talk about is this multiply by 1. And again, a lot of this is stuff that you've already seen in the skill builder. The idea here is you're not truly ever multiplying by 1 because it doesn't ever change the value of anything. But that's also the underlying rationale as to why it's an acceptable strategy. And so the idea there is when you're adding, say, 1/2 and 1/4, low-level arithmetic fraction addition, you can't do that because you know you need a common denominator. So how do I get a common denominator? I've got to get this 2 to look like a 4. That is what the whole LCM concept's about. But I can't just square this up. Why? Because it is an expression. And I can't just start squaring things because that's going to change its underlying value. So the next best thing that I can do is effectively square it, but really multiply by 1 in the process. And so the idea there is 1, as you know, is the same numerator and denominator. So if I wanted a 2 in the denominator, I'm just throwing a 2 up top. And I think we tend to do this pretty subconsciously more often than we realize, perhaps. But it is important to just kind of keep in mind, like, oh yeah, I guess multiply by 1 is a tool that I could use. Now notice here what it says. It says on the GMAT, your goal is to eliminate denominators. I think that's good advice. Meaning, you know I said to you last week, hey, fractions are friendly and decimals are deadly. But I would go a step further and say integers are ideal. And anytime I could get them down to just integers only, I for sure want to do that. Now, is this an example where I could get this down to integers only? Hell no. But what's interesting about a question like this, which makes it more complicated, is that it's fractions on top of fractions. Like a fraction is bad enough as it is. Even though I'm saying it's friendly, integers are ideal, remember. But when I got to do fractions on top of fractions, that's a pain in my ass. So I really try to avoid them if I can. Now what you see in front of you is a classic expression, because there is no left side, there is no right side, there is only one side to it. A textbook way to do it, and again, textbook is typically the worst way, one of the worst ways to do it. You would simply add these two together, divide by the denominator, which really means multiply by its reciprocal, and boom, get you to where you need to be. And you'll get there, and it'll take you, I don't know, 20 seconds maybe, and you'll feel good about it. And I say, why? Why do you feel so good? It's This ain't a 20-second question. This is like 10 seconds. You spend double the time you should on a question such as this. So if you're in that group, 90% of you say, I want a 7-something, man. That's why I'm here. Then this is a classic example where I've got to start to learn how to tackle this efficiently, not just be content that I'm getting things done accurately. And I said that from day one. I got to be focused on both. So, question for you. If I want to start to kill the denominators that I see and I want to multiply by 1, what would be a good number to throw in the numerator and denominator to start to clean this up in essentially one step? All right, good. So you guys are saying, look, man, it's just got to be a 3. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm happy to see this. And again, this is a fairly easy question to start. And the idea, I'm hoping that's a typo, Roy. Okay, so as we look at this, because if you notice, this is a 3 and that's a 3, and there's no denominator here. So really, I would throw a 1 in the mix there. That's a default value. And then this is just arithmetic from week 1. It's like, what's the LCM of 1 and 3? Just 3. Thus, if I want to kill all the denominators I see, then yeah, I would want to multiply everything by a 3. Now if I do that, the 3's cancel here, 3's cancel there. Since it's a 1, this becomes a 3. And now I'm left with 3a plus 2a, which is 5a, divided by 5. So that whole expression, at its essence, was simply a. And so to that Algorian theme of inconvenient truth, you see it right here. Like, this was an awfully inconvenient way of writing frickin' A. And that's it. Now, is this tough? No. But the concept that I want you to start to get, you start to see it scale up into a question such as this one. Because this question here is the same thing. Exactly. And as you look at this, you start to recognize that, like, hey, they're only trying to make my job more difficult because they've now put letters in the place of numbers, and they say, ooh, abstraction, let's rock some people's worlds. But if you're already starting to get a little bit more comfortable with how the GMAT tries to screw you, you don't panic when you see something like this. You realize that, it's a concept I already know how to do. Let me just see if I can kind of connect the dots back if I need to, dumbing it down if I have to what I already know. And that's what we just saw in a previous question. Now notice what it says. It says, in the expression above. Now you might think to yourself, like, wait a minute, dude, you just told us an expression doesn't have an equal sign. Like, what the F? I know you suck at math, but how can you suck that badly? And I would say to you, no, I don't suck that bad. These guys are just kind of lying to you a little bit. Because this ain't an expression, that's an equation. It's clear as day. But if you look at the backside there, it says, what is the value of y? So they're really trying to get you to say, hey, y equals something. Let's focus on what this y is equal to. And now all of a sudden, when they're basically asking you for the value of that, that is an expression. But I want you to also start to notice how they introduced a y variable in, and no one gives two shits about y. So some of those dirty tricks the test maker has up his sleeve just includes overwhelming you, not with just variables in general, but more than even the question is involving. And that's okay, but you got to start to not hyperventilate and start to see through it. That's all. So now, as we get into this question here, you can do it the same exact way we just did the last question. In fact, our books would have you do just that. I don't think that's bad, but I do not believe it is great. And for me, as I go to town on these questions, I want to always be in search of style points. Style points from a judge who's theoretically watching every single move I make and rating me in my performance. Is he giving me a 10 out of 10 in style, or is he giving me a 1 out of 10 in style? Those of us that like to do brute force, it's a 1 out of 10. Those of us who like to do it with flair get the 10 out of 10. And so as you go through these questions, that's often also what helps you beat the timer to beat the test, because you're not wasting a lot of, I suppose, time and energy in something that doesn't really matter. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is obviously be able to see it the way we just did it, but not do it. Like, to me, I would much rather you take some time and try to figure out a better way to tackle this. We all know how to do it the textbook way. Shit, we just did it 5 minutes ago. But that don't mean I want to do it again. Because what's it going to do? Essentially reinforce, I don't want to call it a bad habit, but it ain't a great one, especially on a question like this, because I'll tell you this much. Remember, there's no such thing as an accident on this test. The test maker is out to screw 99% of you. Hook up 1% of us. And when he hooks up 1% of us, that's because he's constantly whispering, sometimes yelling at us in a question, clues that we should be able to run with to finish things out. And I would argue here, man, oh man, this guy is whispering, not yelling, but it's a pretty loud whisper. So with that then, I want to take a crack at this question. Let's put 90 seconds on the clock. This is a very easy question, but I'm giving you time because I want you to get style points on this. I don't want right answers. I mean, of course I do, but I don't care about that. This is a easy question is what I'm going to say. So with that, let's put a minute and a half on. Let's do this right. Let's get this started. Alright guys, not a bad job on this question. And again, not a terribly tough question at all. But like I said, I'm much more concerned about process and approach in here. My hope is as we are wrapping up week 2, we are starting to appreciate that. So first things first, let me ask you this question. If I want to do this the same exact way as the previous question, and I want to get rid of all the denominators that I see here, what would I, in theory, want to multiply numerator and denominator by here so that, again, it equals 1 on this one? All right, good. So you guys are telling me, look, man, if there's an m and there's an x, dude, LCM of that is mx, so mx over mx, 100% correct. I'm glad you guys are saying that. And that is the way the book will have you go through the question. I don't like it, though, because I don't think it's great. So let me ask you this question here. On this far end, they are telling me m is equal to 1/2 x. What are they really trying to tell me with that one equation, folks? When you looked at that, what did you say? Ah, I see what he's saying. So, you guys are saying, well, they're really trying to tell you that x is equal to 2m. And that's not bad. That's not bad, folks. But I want you to look at something for a split second. look at what Raju said, because Raju took it, I think, to the next level. And this is very important because I think it's very, very easy to just say, oh, well, x is equal to 2m, pop the 2m's in for the x's. And that's not bad. I just don't think it's great. And again, I want great. I want 99. 99 ain't bad. 99 is great. I think a lot of people think that, oh, when I substitute, I basically just pull out one letter and I pop something in its place. That's kind of true, but it doesn't have to be. Meaning, if you could start to see bigger things that you could pull out in its entirety, what the F is stopping you from doing it? It ain't math. Math allows you to do it. So in this question here, what I loved is that maybe Raju saw this as m is equal to x over 2 and said, huh, that's the same thing as m over 1 is equal to x over 2. And that x over 2 looks really similar to the 2 over x that I've already got. Is that a coincidence? There's no effing coincidence on this test. In fact, just to kind of hammer this home further, because algebra says I could just turn these upside down if I wanted to, my sincerest hope is if this were the equation that were given to you, that not one single person in here would be like, oh, that means x is equal to 2m. What the F would we want to do that for? Think about that for a second. When I now have an entire thing that matches up beautifully there, and of course the 1 over m matches up beautifully too, but if I have 4 over m, I'm less likely to want to do that plug and chug. Then for me, as a 99er or a 99er in training, I say thank you GMAC odds for hooking a brother up. I see this 2 out of x, but I realize you're really just trying to tell me 1 over m. And once you tell me 1 over m, then I see the only denominator in the mix is just really m's. This is 4 over 2, or just 2 as my final answer. Is that a lot of math? There's no math at all, but I can tell you right now the judges are going wild. They're giving me my 10 out of 10 for the style that I'm employing as I go through this question, because I'm showing the judges that this ain't a math test. That's math. I suck at math, but I am good at reasoning. And that's what I'm happy to display every single time I can to the judges that are watching me. And I'm pointing that out to you on a question like this because, again, I don't care about this question. This question ain't hard, and I've said that time and time again. But I want us to start to think on a higher level. Remember where we're trying to get to, folks? At the top of the pyramid. First hour, first day, most important hour of them all. And I can tell you right now, the mx over mx, at least seeing this, okay, that's good. But I love Raju's observation there, because now hopefully you start to see that takes it to that next level. And if I'm recognizing that, this is less than 30 seconds being spent. F this minute and a half stuff, folks. So just, again, be hungry on this stuff to try to tighten up timing. All right, that's the multiply by 1 tool. Hugely important in the world of expressions. How about we now kick this up into the world of expressions and equations, which is tool number 2, combining like terms and factoring. Anytime you see terms that are similar, algebra pretty much kind of gets you to focus by pulling them together. So 3x plus 4x equals 7x, put the numbers together, put the letters together, boom. Now, when is this important? Sometimes to solve. Sometimes to just get your math to look like their math. But when you start to get stuck in a question and don't know where to go, this is a good sort of fallback principle. So with that then, I want to take a look at this question here. It is a very good question. It's a good question because it's ready to start hammering people hard early. I don't know if I would say there's a drop the course answer on this one, but I'll be honest, it's a pretty disrespectful answer if you were to try to pick it. Why? Because what it says to me, at least, is, hey, I kind of did the skill builder, but you don't know how high I think of myself. And it makes me go, what? How does that even compute? Like, if you don't know how to do this question, I kind of see what you might try to pull, but then if you like half-assed your way through the skill builder and then come to class saying, I prepared for class, and then you walk into an answer choice like that, it kind of is a bad move. So, to me, I'm not going to say it's a drop the course answer. I'll call it a trap, but I really think it's crap, folks. I want us to be able to see it, not touch it. Now, here's the kicker. Some of us will have no clue on how to get this thing started. That's okay. Meaning, we did the skill builder. We actually did pretty well. We didn't crush it like we were supposed to. Hopefully, after getting my ass handed to me today, I'll learn my lesson, and next week I will not repeat it again. But I kind of know what I need to know to get this question done. It's just that I'm stuck because it's large numbers. It's abstract. There's exponents in funky ass places. So I don't really know what to do. Hey folks, this is where you got to start to dumb things down. Remember, there is no shame whatsoever to dumbing anything down in here. 99ers, we do it all the time. Only shame comes from not doing it, getting the question wrong, and you are a dumbass, you deserve it. So don't find yourself in those shoes. Check pride at the door. Roll up your sleeves, try to keep it simple, and try to figure out, really, if I had to look at this, what are they really telling me? Let me see if I can unlock it, the pattern that is, by simplifying it in my head, and then start to realize, like, oh yeah, this ain't bad. So with that, let's go ahead and put 2 on the clock, and then we'll talk. right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. Number one answer on the board is the classic trap / crap answer. So question for you. When you looked at this, what did you think was going to be that borderline disrespectful answer here today that people were going to be all too happy to submit? And it was like, what? Really? Come on now. Yes. So notice what you guys are saying. So there are two sets of answers here that people are suggesting. I would argue to you, as you look at this, I think B and E are absolutely right. I think Rayshawn's right on this one. Let's rewind back. I think this is just disrespectful. I think that's really it at its core. E is disrespectful. I think B is, I'm just unprepared. Like, let's call a spade here, folks. If I'm picking choice B, it just means like, I didn't really do the skill builder. You got me. Really? Shocking. You mean only 5% of the class is in the same boat as you, thinking B is a good answer? I mean, I kind of did a skill builder. I know that if I got a variable and an exponent, in that up at the top there, then I got to set the bases equal so that the exponents are equal. I see a 4 to the 8, I see a 4 to the x, so obviously x is 8. Why is this idiot giving us so much time on this question? Maybe to give you a chance to go back and do the skill builder real quickly, I don't know. So then there are some of us who are, of course, are laughing our asses off at those of us who are about to pick choice B, and then we say, hey, you idiot, it's not like that. Don't you see you got to be adding? And it's like, do some math. Get to 4 to the 32 equals 4 to the x. Clearly, x is 32 that way. And it's like, okay, I get that too. The problem is, there's not one single formula in the math skill builder that taught you this formula. And I can tell you right now, remember, you suck at math. I say that because you're taking a class from me, and I suck at math. And I can tell you right now, I have no ability to come up with new exponent formulas that are not yet out in the real world published already. My mind ain't there. And if my mind ain't there, your mind ain't there. Do not try to come up with new formulas that are not part of the skill builder. And that's what happens with something like choice E. There's not one single thing that allows you to do that. So let's rewind back for a second. It's gonna make us this much money, Roy. So exactly. And why you gotta put it on me? I'm not picking choice E. We can put that on all the other E's, not me, man. Don't sully my good name. I don't know how good a name it is anymore, but fine. So here's the one thing that I want to ask you guys. If we are gonna try to dumb this down for a second, imagine I'm trying to teach my little kindergartner daughter how to look at this question. I do not want to hear about 4 to the 8. My daughter, she's smart, she don't know 4 to the 8. So, what general basic observation can you make for me right here just by looking at this and keeping it simple? Again, just make it simple so I can explain it to her. What would you say? Yes, so I like the way Katrina's saying it, but also Roy nailed it, Sim nailed it. I like it, you know, Vivian, James, 100% great, Tommy. Because notice what you guys are just saying to me. You guys are like, look, man, there's just 4 of the same thing. David, you're like gonna like scar my freaking 4-year-old daughter, man. She ain't gonna be able to hang. She don't know 4 to the 8. And the reason I'm saying that is because if I look at this and I just say, hey man, I just see the same thing over and over, that's a good start. That's a real good start. Because I look at this and I say, hey, why not just make this, I don't know, let's say a Z plus a Z plus a Z plus a Z. Right? There's 4 of them there. That's the same thing as those 4 Z's. That's true too. Sad but true. Gosh, it's true. Sometimes she does say frickin' A. Thankfully, she hasn't learned the F-bomb from me yet, but yes, that's true. So in this case, you are looking at what is what? 4z. 4z. I am saying that because if we can go from here to just dumbing it down like this, and everybody in this class knows it's 4z, if not, log off now, call customer service, see if they'll help you out. And if all we've done is taken one of these pops and turned it into one of these, then really I can just kind of go back on it. So then really I'm looking at something more like that. And this is very important, because let me say this about algebra as a lesson. I already said it's the second most important lesson of the entire quant section, possibly tied with arithmetic for first. But what I love about algebra, aside from its usefulness down the road on every single course moving forward, is it starts to reveal the lazy and the arrogant among us. Like this question's a great example. Because my hope, the disrespectful crew, they did this skill builder. They know more than this B crew, but they're just lazy. They're arrogant. And thus they kind of just get into a very, hey, Felipe, I appreciate it. Dude, there's a boatload of people, sadly enough, in this world. In the world of Choice E. But here's the kicker. Like, I know Felipe would never pick this. I know Agrippa, you would never pick this. Because you're better than that. And that's what troubles me. Like, I'll be honest, I actually have more hope for the guy in B right now. Because B just kind of did it, but didn't really understand. F it. Homeboy hopefully is learning, although he should be learning on his own time with the skill builder. But those of us in Choice E, I start to worry about. Because I start to say, like, is there much that I can do? Because I'm trying to teach you guys how important it is to dumb things down. Some of us don't want to do that. We're like, I'm not a dumbass, dude. Speak for yourself. I could get this done without doing it. It's like, well, no, because that's how we end up in E. Because had we just done this, now one single person I know in E would have ever said E. Why? You don't even see a 32 here. It's impossible. And thus, of course, once you get into this form, which by the way is just an inconvenient form of this, or I guess this is inconvenient of this, and this is already inconvenient of what? Well, if I have like bases, I just add exponents, 9 equals x. Like, is this a hard question? Not even remotely. But what I want you to start to see is how the test maker can try to mess with your head a little bit by giving you stuff in slightly different forms, ones that aren't in the formula-friendly way that you're accustomed to seeing it. But at its core, the test maker's like, hey, do you know how to combine like terms? Remember, it's a very important tool to be using anytime you see things that are very similar. So take a look at this guy, for example. It says, what is rad 363 plus rad 147 plus rad 27? Again, it's just what times what equals a radical. You could brute force your way there all day long. But question for you now. Imagining that there are 3 hypothetical doors, door 1, door 2, door 3. Which door do I start this journey on? This is not an opinion, folks. This is a fact. What would you say I should be doing? I want to make sure we are on the same page on this one. Okay, good. Absolutely. It is definitely door number 3. Because what you're saying to me is like, man, I'm starting to agree with you. I think I do suck at math. The bigger the number, the bigger the mistake. Why the F am I going to touch any of that crap? They're large, they're weird-ish. This is pretty simple. I'm all in there. And I'm all in there, but I am factor treeing, and I may have said as much last week. If I didn't, let me say it to you now. Know that 15 by 15 multiplication table down cold. But another skill that I would encourage you to have is being able to take your pen as a dart, throwing it on the 15 by 15 grid, and breaking down any single number in that grid into prime base exponents immediately. So you see 27, you know it's 3 cubed, you can pull out a pair of 3s immediately. And that's it. I do believe if you're factor treeing on this test, you're probably effing something up. But this is that moment that, again, you start to pick up those style points. This is that moment where you start to realize that whole slow down so you can speed up is very important to your GMAT health. Because right now, the idiot in the cubicle next to me is sitting there trying to continue to solve, but I'm a 99er who kind of sucks at math. And I'm constantly appreciative of one thing, that answers are assets. So I put my head down, I pray to the almighty GMAT gods, and I say, please hook a brother up with one answer involving a radical 3. And I say, thank you, thank you. Kind of damn you, but at least I'm 1 in 3 within seconds. And this is important because this may not be question 4, this may be question 31. It may be down to the last few seconds. I might know how to do it, I just don't got the chance to do it. Only the idiots guess 1 in 5, folks. Don't ever forget that. Got to do something to increase those odds. So now I continue. Well, notice they only have radical 3s there. So right off the bat, you know that the rest of the stuff is divisible by radical 3. Hopefully you start to see the 3s up in here, the 1, 2, 1. The 1, 2, 1 you know is a perfect square. You're already at 14 rad 3. You're praying to the almighty GMAT gods. Give me one answer greater than 14 rad 3 and I'm done. They damn you once again. But question for you. Not that this is hard, but why do I not need to even solve door number 2 now? How can I get to the right answer on this within seconds without even touching the math there, folks? Because I suck at math. The more math I do, the more mistakes I make. Yeah. So what you guys are saying to me is that 30 is too big. And think about why. James, I think, nailed it nicely, right? It's the middle number, solid, Kylie. So it's like, when you look at this, you know this boy here ain't even going to reach 11 rad 3. Like if we max it out, solid, Stephanie, but like we max it out, we'd say this is at most going to be 25. It ain't even going to get there. At most 25. Find me an answer less than 25 and I'm done. Choice D, final answer. Again, this is not hard math. Hopefully, once you knew that it was a multiple of 3, right, because it had to be with the answer choices that you were given, you say, hey, that's really close to 150. 150 is 3 times 50, but it's a 3 short, which means it's 3 times 49, 497 rad 3. So you can get to 21 rad 3 within seconds without any sort of factorization taking place. But again, I don't care about this question. This question is very easy. But what I care about as a 99er is perhaps seeing a question that maybe looks more like this. So maybe the square root of a 5-digit plus the square root of a 5-digit plus the square root of a 4-digit, and perhaps on a question like that, this is door 1, this is door 2. And I might be tempted to go into here as door number 3 because it's the last door for me to do. But those of us that are in this course right now, not focused on that low-level shit of the pyramid of what I need to know, and I'll be honest, even trying to learn from me what I need to be doing, but instead trying to think at the top there of what I got to be on the lookout for, these are the types of strategies I need you to be thinking about as we start to scale up in terms of difficulty, which is, hey, don't ever lose sight of answers being assets. Don't ever lose sight that the same math test but a reasoning test. And right now, again, all the test makers given me is massive style points for being able to weasel out right here. Now check it. If it takes you longer to figure out, well, that this is going to be less than this and then to get to this, then I don't want you doing it. If you're a machine and you already know, oh yeah, that's 7 squared times 3, boom, this is what I did for a living when I was a kid, is memorizing square roots, okay, fine. Then knock it out. But when you get to a nasty square root 5-digit like that, unless you have an effed up childhood, you probably don't know that by heart. And in which case then, this is where you start to have multiple tools to get things done. You can't walk around with just one set of tools. Memorization pays off in the short run. Derivation in the long run. And what you're starting to see here is sort of that same dichotomy between perhaps a little bit of brute force math, which ain't brute force because it's just simply in your head, and a little bit more of that reasoning. Long run gets you way, way, way further real quickly. All right, with that then, I want to bring us to our first tough question of the day. So why is it a tough question? Well, first of all, it's got punctuation. Anytime you see exclamation points in a math question, you start to wonder what that's going on. But remember what exclamation points are shorthand for: factorials. Factorials simply mean like the number itself times 1 below it, times 1 below it, times 1 below it, all the way down to 1. So 3 factorial is 3 times 2 times 1, or the number 6. It's just shorthand. So notice what this question says. What is the greatest prime factor, so that's an arithmetic concept, of 12 factorial times 11 factorial plus 11 factorial times 10 factorial. So remember, think about what we know from last week. Whatever this number is, we would start factor treeing it down to figure out what the greatest prime factor is. But now, they didn't give it to us that. We got to now figure out what the number is. So now think about what 12 factorial is. 12 times 11 times 10 times 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Once I'm done solving all that, put that on pause. Do the same thing now from 11 to 1. Put that on pause. Multiply those two things that were on pause. Put that on pause. Come back, redo that again for the second part of it. Then come back, add them all together. Oh, and then start the factor treeing. You will be 37 minutes into this question before you've even made a dent. And thus you start to say, this is an effed up way I'm doing it. And so this is sad but true. So I don't know if I started introducing you last week to my mentality of like, hey man, you've got two options on all these damn questions as far as I'm concerned. And it's the same thing as if you're in a room in real life. Your job is to either go through the drywall or go through the door. Like when we're in real life, most of us avoid the drywall. We realize it's painful, time-consuming, expensive to fix, so on and so forth. We look for the damn door. But for some reason, when it comes to a math question, a lot of us have no problem going through drywall. We don't ultimately get to where we need to be, but we got no problem damn trying like we're the Kool-Aid man or something. It doesn't work that way. What you have to start to think to yourself is, perhaps that notion of slowing down so I could speed up becomes important. Oh yeah, exactly. There, you guys got it. And so the one thing that I would say is, even here, you can start to simplify things by doing what? I don't know, looking to combine. Shockingly, there's some good advice at the top. But here's what I'm going to say to you guys. Some of you ate it in a big way on that last question. The poll results are hopefully still staring you in the face and giving you side-eye. My hope is you don't eat it again, because I will tell you right now, there is another lazy, arrogant answer in the mix. It's not a drop the course answer yet. I do believe we will have some of those here today, but this ain't it just yet. But it is one that's going to start to say, hey man, if I'm already strike 2 and we ain't even done with the first hour, how's this going to work out for me today? So have humility is what I'm going to ask. As you go through this question, if you don't know what the number one sucker answer is going to be, you're in it. Or worse. If you say to me, well, I don't know what the right answer is. I don't even know how to do this. I mean, I thought the sucker answer I picked was the sucker answer, but I just couldn't see something else. Use some logic. If already you think that that's a sucker answer and none of your skills suggest that you're on top of things, then you're probably right that it is the sucker answer. Even if you don't know how to do it, pick something else. Like, this ain't rocket science. It's called process of elimination. So even if I can get lucky and get a question right and I don't know what I'm up to, hey, that stays your secret, my secret, and in between us and the test maker, and that's it, and that's good. So with that then, let me put 2 minutes on this question. Dumb this down if you need to. There is no shame again to doing it. Let's talk when time's up. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into this question here slowly. But I want to comment on what I've just dubbed the first quote of the day, because I think it's a good comment. It's a good comment because I know it ain't unique. I know for a fact there are other people in this class right now that are feeling similar sentiments. And here's what I want to say. That's okay. Remember, it's not as if crushing the skill builder equates into you crushing things in class. It's not the way it works. Crushing the skill builder equates to you not getting crushed in class. That's the way it works. Sometimes you'll get stuff right, sometimes you'll get stuff wrong. It just means you ain't going to get crushed. You're going to understand what I'm saying. You're going to understand what Megan's saying. You may not have seen it. You may not have thought even to do it, but at least you understand it. That's my goal as we go through these lessons, to at least be there. What is not acceptable is to maybe have half-assed our way through the skill builder and then honestly not have a freaking clue as to what's coming out of my mouth and how that connects to anything in this world. Like, that's more problematic. And I know that happens too. And at some point it's like, dude, why does this guy not teach me something? And it's like, well, wait a minute, dude. I'm teaching you a whole lot. It's just going so fast, so far over your head because you're not positioning yourself in a place that's there to receive it. I'm telling you right now, folks, there is no shame to watching any of these lessons once, twice, 3 times. Before you know it, you start to see things from different angles, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, dude, that's what that means. And it's important to understand, because look, I would love to go at whatever pace every single person would love to go at. But we didn't pay for that, right? Like, this is a group class. Like, in order to do something like that, you know how many thousands and thousands it would be? So it's like we try to figure out what's the best way to do this. And remember, there's a safety net around you every single day for 2 hours with office hours. Shit, I'm here in class always private chatting students. Megan's always private chatting students. You guys are always free to ask questions whenever you want. But if we start to ask questions like, well, wait a minute. So what's a prime number again? That's on you. Like, that's some stupid shit. And I'm not saying anybody's in that world, but if it is, hey, start to accept responsibility. Now, the only other final comment I want to make about what I said is a quote of the day is, if I'm learning something right now and I'm articulating them in takeaways, I'm actually hella happy. Like, I could be right now 0 for 5. And if I'm learning something, I'm pretty damn happy. As long as I'm not in those disrespectful answers. Like, if I'm in disrespectful answers, I'm feeling like an idiot. And I'll be honest, right? Well, I always am, I suppose. But it's like, that's now on me. That's a false negative. That's telling the test maker I'm dumber than I really am. And I'm not that dumb, test maker. I know I keep telling you I am, but I'm not. I'm just arrogant. Well, then rein that shit in. Because again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. For lack of a better word, I could teach dumb. I can't teach arrogant. Because there's something that we can all learn if we're humble enough to accept it. But if we're in that mindset, I was like, I could do this. Let me show you how it's done. And it's like, wrong, 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 wrong. It's like, welcome to the 510, folks. That's where I am. I don't want to be there. And I suppose I already said final comment, but I really want to make this now a real final comment. I don't know what working hard on the skill builder means, or even working so hard on the skill builder means, because I want to be clear going back to day one, because this is more important to me than this question, because again, it's about this journey and the process. Activity is not achievement. I could have spent 8 hours on the skill builder all day today. I took today off from work so I could come to class and not get my ass handed to me. And here I am getting my ass handed to me. That's bullshit. What the F? I should end it all now. And it's like, well, wait a minute. What did you do during those 8 hours? Like, let's start talking about what your takeaways are starting to look like. Like, I know you worked really hard, but what did you learn? If you cannot articulate what you're learning with the time that you're spending, you're wasting your time. And remember, it's not just I got to do more reps. I think a lot of, I actually had lunch with one of my students who lives in LA, just like yesterday, in fact. And that was, yeah, I love it, Vivian. It's like, what I always try to say, and again, it's kind of a fundamental philosophy of my life, I suppose, is just do more with less. Do more with less. There's people be like, now I'm really going off tangent, but I think this is an important one I just want to comment on quickly. It's like, dude, I sometimes will get these random ass calls. I'll be like, oh man, I'm looking for a tutor, blah, blah, blah. And, I've already gone through, all the official guide questions. I'd already taken Manhattan GMAT. I also took Veritas GMAT. I've done like 7,000 questions. And I've gone through all the LSAT materials now because I know those are great, critical reasoning questions. And I've done all the GRE, math questions because I know they got great, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, so, I'm still stuck at a 570 or 600, and I really want to get a 760. So, what advice do you have for me? And at that point, no joke, I say, you got to find a new test. GMAT's not for you. Like, well, what do you mean? Dude, if you've gone through that many questions and your ass still can't do this, your ass is never going to do it. And so a lot of times I think we just think, oh, it's just about the reps. It ain't the reps, man. It ain't the reps at all. For the vast majority of us, it ain't. For some of us, for whatever reason, that's what we got to do is muscle memory. It's not a winning way to go. It's inefficient. Instead, be very hyper-focused on takeaways. What is it that I see here that I didn't see before? What should I be doing when I see said trigger? What are some best practices to put that into action? Let me now execute. I learned that way. So that when I see similar questions, and I will always see similar questions because this shit ain't creative as far as the test maker is concerned, I don't struggle, guys. You got to keep that in mind. All right, let's get into this question next. So first off, what is the number one sucker answer here? What's a full quarter of the class going to pick? Because they're like, yeah, F all that. Let's get to the sucker answer. I want to be in it. I got nothing else but time on my side. I'll be retaking this course 3 times if Veritas allows me. Shit, I'll be applying round 1 this year, round 1 next year, round 1 the following year. And it's like, what? Why? Where is the respect? Exactly. It is choice C. I'm not going to lie. I don't think E is a sucker answer. I actually have so much more respect for anybody picking choice E because at least they're coming close. C, not. Think about why for a second. Again, tell me what you're demonstrating. You're demonstrating to me, hey, I'll dumb this down for him and his 4-year-old daughter. He's got essentially something times something else plus the same something else times something else altogether different. It's under the header of combined like terms. This ain't hard. I'll pull the like term out. I get to B times A plus C. So I saw the kind of little magic he did before. He just kind of stuck in placeholders, put that crap back in. So, okay, this really is 11 factorial times 12 factorial plus 10 factorial. That idiot's always going on about how this ain't a math test, but it's a reasoning test. And I know for a fact he ain't no human calculator, nor does he want me to be. So 12 factorial is a crazy number. 10 factorial is a crazy number. There's no way the test maker wants me to add all that and then break it all down. So boom, 11's a prime number. I crushed arithmetic last week. So choice C, final answer. And it's like, okay. I sincerely doubt you crushed arithmetic, first of all, if this is the logic you're employing. But secondly, ask yourself, why the F I gave you 2 minutes to do this question if this is what you were able to accomplish? That's now disrespecting me. Forget disrespecting the test maker. That's not disrespecting me as a teacher to say, hey, don't you know how to run your class? Like, don't you know how much time you should be giving people? This is like a 2-second question, man. Why are you giving us 2 minutes to do it? I don't know what to tell you. Like, this should hurt. And I'm seeing some of you now as back-to-back kind of chump moves. And I actually tried to private chat a few of you on this question that got eaten up on the previous question, saying, hey, don't do this again. This is where now the bad habits start to set in. So question for you. Obviously, choice C, sucker answer. What critical observation should everybody in choice C have been able to make that they just failed to make there? And because they're lazy, they're arrogant. That is calling a spade a spade. Exactly. Solid, Patrick, great, Felipe, and Nate, and Min Young. You're assuming you're echoing the 10 factorial being common. Because again, here's what I would say to you, awesome, Lisa. Like, when I look at something like this, I don't care if you don't see that. I don't. I suck at math, man. But I'll tell you what I don't suck at is being humble. And so when I look at something, it's like, I don't know what's going on. I don't got no beautiful mind. I don't see numbers everywhere in the sky. It's time for me to write it out and see if I can figure it out. And thus I say, all right, really? when I see 12 factorial, I know it's just a 12 times 11 times 10 times 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 plus 10 factorial is all the same stuff. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like, that is what it is. So now, yeah, dude, you're way better than this, Steven. Like, when you see it written out, but this is what I need you guys to be able to do. Write it out. Now, some of you might be like, well, dude, that wastes a lot of time, and you keep crying about how you want us to beat the timer to beat the test. I do keep crying about that. But you're going to tell me you'd rather save 10 seconds and then get the question wrong? I don't get it. It doesn't even make sense. Spend those extra 10 seconds, write those numbers out. There is no ego in doing so. And then say, holy shit, man, all these things are the same. They are like, and if they're like, I best be combining them. That's what tool number 2 says. So then I look at this and say, oh, so in theory, I could rewrite this 12 factorial as simply 12 times 11 times 10 factorial. Like, that's really what's being said there. And you know what? I didn't see that. Exactly. I think that's well, I actually don't disparage the strategy. I would say someone who is sorry guys, I knew it was almost too good to be true. My mic pack said I think I had 2 bars out of 3. And it's like, how do you go for, it's like damn Apple iPhone crap. It's like, it tells you got like full charge and like 30 minutes later it's like dead. Same thing here, my bad. But what I was saying to Roy is don't disparage this strategy, in that I think that's a half-assed understanding when you pick choice C. So yeah, that's where the lazy, the arrogant start to shine. Yeah, I think that's great, Felipe. I think that's an awesome observation, especially that first part. Testmaker ain't your friend, man. I mean, Testmaker's my friend. Testmaker's Megan's friend. And I know the GMAT shift strikes again. Exactly. So the one thing that I would say as you go through this is have that respect for the test. The Testmaker will one day become your friend, but it takes some effort to get there. It's like you got to try to impress your friend. It's like, I don't know, I love the movie Mean Girls, and it's like, dude, you want to be part of the plastics crew, one day they'll let you in. But until that day, you got to keep trying. All right, so let's go back and look at this question for a second. If I understand that 10 factorial is the common number, then I'm going to pull it out. And then what do I got? 12 times 11 plus 1. Pretty basic here. Exactly, dude. That's good, Nate. Dude, Nate for quote of the day there. That's Nathan. Why do you keep calling? I swear your thing used to say Nathan, so I don't know what the hell's happening. But I might have to call you Nate because I'm gonna just forget. But that's pretty good. That's good. That's pretty good. So nice work, Kylie. So the one thing I want to say is, as you get this far, it's important that you don't say to me, well, okay, now I got here. Clearly 11 is still a big prime. This ain't a math test. There's no way the test wants me to do that long multiplication. And it's like, what? Of course not. But how the hell do you not have this memorized? This is 15 by 15. You got to have that as 132 plus 1 is 133. Like, this is automatic money in the bank. And even here now, what you choose to do is either act like a 99er or not. You either say, listen, man, answers are assets. All I got to worry about is whether 133 is a multiple of a 19 or 23. That's it. And so right now, you see this is about 20. You see that's about 7 of those. You know it ain't going to be this just from even a units digit, let alone an approximation, bus, so on. So then you say, yeah, it looks like it's D. You're done with this exercise. It's not like I want you to know your 19 by 19 multiplication tables. It doesn't work that way. So I just want you to start to see here. So many of you ate it. Now check it. You know, some of you were saying like, choice E is like a, the sucker move. Hell no. Choice E to me is a good educated guess. My hope is there are people in choice E right now because you said, look, C felt too good to be true. Too good to be true. I know I'm not that good yet. So as a result, you know what? I know it can't be A or B. I already know the biggest number I've got is an 11. It scares me when I see A and B's in the poll, folks. Thankfully, they're islands, but I don't like it. I'll just guess D or E. I could live with that all day long. Exactly, dude. That's the way they roll, man. All right. With that, then I want to wrap up tool number 2. Obviously, combined like terms factoring. Very, very important, both with expressions and equations. Tool number 3, do the same to both sides. So what you got on the left, you do it on the right. That's the way equations and inequalities operate. So even here, just as a quick example, if I wanted to start to move this forward quickly, remember what I said, fractions are friendly, decimals are deadly, but integers are ideal. What would you multiply the left side and the right side by to start killing all these denominators with one quick step here? Again, this is where you sometimes have to just be proactive to try to make your life easier. All right, good. So you guys are saying, look, it's 21, man. It's the same question basically as we did earlier in the day. This has a denominator, remember, of 1. That's a default of 3. That's a default of 21. Put them all together, and you're like, oh, yeah, LCM of 1, 3, 21, 21. Like, this is, people wonder, oh, will you ever actually get tested on LCM? Like, why the hell am I learning this? Are they ever going to ask me what's the LCM of 1, 3, 21? Yeah, they just did here. Meaning the 99er is going to showcase his understanding of it and then get the mad style points in the process by making his life easier, whereas the others won't. So when you look at something like this, you're like, all right, let me just multiply 21, 21. Given that the left side is going to cancel out, I would automatically start my rewriting of this on the right side. Now check it. I wouldn't write this whole thing down on my page to begin with. A lot of you need to start to pay attention to how much you're writing on your page. I would argue that equal signs are expensive signs. You don't want to keep using them needlessly. So here, if I start on the right-hand side, I'd say, okay, so this is an 84 minus a 7x. On the left side, I bring it all down. Now, order of operations, as well as, I suppose, algebra rules dictates that you should start to combine like terms, so on and so forth. But why the hell would I ever do that? When I start to recognize that there are certain elements that are the same. Like a minus 7x, they drop immediately. I don't even need to worry about them. Why would I ever distribute this out if I'm aware from my multiplication tables that 12 is a factor of 84? Cancels immediately. X minus 2 is 7, x is 9. Like, this looks like a hairy question until I remember this ain't a math test, it's a reasoning test, and anytime I can showcase my style when I do it, I get rewarded. All right, last tool I want to talk about is eliminating variables. This is when you have multiple equations or multiple inequalities. You know the general rule is n unique linear equations. You have 2 methods of doing it, substitution and elimination. Remember, for inequalities, the elimination method is what's best suited. Add them when they're in the same direction. You want to get good at both methods. You want to get great at both methods. Both methods will always work, always with a capital A. It's just that sometimes you need to do more manipulation on a set of equations to get them to work. So substitution works well when you can express a variable by itself. Elimination works well when you can add, things cancel, or you can subtract and things cancel. That's the way it is. If you suck at these, and suck means anything other than the top of the game execution excellence, just drill, worksheet that, simultaneous equation worksheets. And this is the kind of stuff that muscle memory or reps help, because there's no words, you're just executing like a robot. Whereas, I suck at rate problems. Let me just do 50 rate problems. Like, why? It's probably a waste. Like, figure out what's wrong with the first few, get an approach, then start to execute. It's all the same stuff. So low-level skills, I get it. Higher level, there's a more fundamental weakness you need to address. All right, with that, then I want to bring us to this last question here. This is a good question. It's a very easy question, first of all. But to me, it's a great question because it's a word problem. Vast majority of questions you're going to see on the quant section are word problems. In that, I will be defining them loosely as problems involving words. Thus, it's a word problem. The challenge with word problems is the rereading that takes place. A lot of us love to reread. A lot of us just want to go to the end of that question mark and then start all over again. And then if I ever push and say, well, what the hell did you accomplish that first time through? The answer is like, well, I just need to kind of get a sense of what was going on. And then if I say, okay, really, so what sense did you get that was going on? Invariably, head goes back down and starts to read again because you got no sense of what was going on. It's like some bullshit kind of stalling coping mechanism that you're dealing with. It doesn't work. It doesn't pay. So instead, you want to be much more active in your reading. I've said to you last week, I'll say it to you now, you got to learn to write what you read as you read. Read it once. Like this question, if you read this more than once, I don't care if you get it right, it's a fail. There's no reason to read this more than one time. That means stop at the commas, stop at the periods, translate as you go, get those expressions, equations down. When you hit those question words, slam on the brakes. You've got to start to get the process right. So with that then, let's put 2 on the clock, bring some respect. Let's talk when time's up and we'll get into our first break. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. I think this is a great question. And it's one of those questions where, as a word problem, you start to learn the importance of words mattering. You'll hear me say that a hell of a lot next week. Remember, we do word problems out of sequence in here. We will be doing them next week. I want you to start to see word problems very early and often in this journey. So if you understand that in word problems, words matter, what would you say is the most important word in this question here? It's a bit of an opinion, but I'd be curious to know if any of you started to pick up on it. If so, what do you think it might be? I think more is important. I'm okay with more. More is good. I think some is important as well. I'm okay with that. That this is all translation. I think the twice is good too. Great, great, great. I'm looking for something different. So let me start to kind of get into something else I want you thinking about. Yeah, that's what I want to see. The Stephanie Wonder Twins, Tommy, Steven, absolutely right. I want to get into the question words for a second. And the reason for that is, remember in critical reasoning, which seemed a lifetime ago, there was the classic right answer to the wrong question? They do that in word problems all the time. And in fact, next week, one of the first guiding strategies we're going to have is something, honestly, it seems kind of stupid. It's, hey, answer the proper question. And it's like, what? I paid what to hear this idiot teach me that he wants me to answer the proper question? Like, I ain't stupid. I'm on question 6. I got to answer question 6. Like, add some value in my life, dude. And it's like, no. It's not like that. That's insulting. I agree. It's more that, listen, they're asking you for the first lift. Is some idiot out there going to answer the second lift? You bet. The polls don't lie. You'll see it here for yourself. Is it a coincidence that the guy who's answering the wrong question doesn't even tell me that that's the most important word in the question? No, it's no coincidence. That's what happens. And so I started trying to tell you guys, hey, it's all important to start thinking like the test maker, Veritas Party Lime. But I said, hey, I go rogue. I understand how important it is to get desperate and to make good moves when you do. And that's where thinking like the Vegas test taker comes into the picture as far as I'm concerned. So again, the guy who's in Vegas, he's had a bender of a night, ill-prepared to put it mildly, but he knows a thing or two because that's what's kept him successful in Vegas, and he knows how to game the system. And so if I look at a question like this, because this ain't question 6, but instead question 31 as an example, and I know how to do this. This isn't hard. It's just that, dude, I effed up my timing. I got eaten alive on, I don't know, a 4 to the 8 style factorial question earlier. Then what I'm going to say is, I bet you someone's going to eat it on a question like this from picking the wrong answer or answering the wrong question, I should say. And if I know that they're asking me for the first lift and there are 2 lifts in the mix, some idiot out there is going to answer the second lift. So as a result, all I'm going to do is look for answers that add up to the grand total and pick from one of those. So I look at this, I say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, I can live with this. 50-50. Now, am I certain that the right answer is going to be one of these and the sucker is going to be here? I ain't certain of shit. I'm gambling. It's not like I'm a perfect card counter of sorts. You know, I'm doing the best I can, but I'm still a little hungover. I'm not going to ask for my money back from the pit boss if I lose this bet. But am I going to be shocked if I lose this, if I win on this one? Hell no, because that's how predictable this test is. And so when I look at something like this, I feel confident that I could fall back on this if I had nothing else. But of course, I ain't going to get to the 99th percentile if I'm freaking doing this on question 31. This is low-level shit, so I got to be able to do this right. And that starts with writing what you read as you read, translating as you go. So sentence number 1, the sum of Draymond's 2 lifts was 750 pounds. So sum equals 750. Now, if you translated it such as this, I'd say, hey, you check the box as far as translation is concerned. That is a D- translation, in my opinion. Like, what value did you really add to this? Nothing at all. It's kind of a garbage translation. At least dumb it down. The fact that there are 2 lifts, at least use 2 variables. And I would say, you know, to Francis and to David and to Sim, those are all okay, but I would say they're kind of shitty too. I'd give you a C- if I'm grading you. And again, I'm just being very blunt right now. Because for me, those aren't variables that mean something. I want to use variables that mean something. X stands for xylophones, Y stands for yo-yos, so I'm not that keen on it. Those of you saying F and S, I get that. That's the way the book does it. I'd give you a solid B in this case. Alpha beta. I'd give you a solid B, maybe a B plus, because at least F stands for first, S stands for second, and I would say, well, you know what? That's not building in anything in terms of difficulty increasing. Like, what am I going to assume? There's only one guy who's sitting here at this weightlifting competition? How do I know that in this case that Iggy isn't in the mix or Steph isn't in the mix and they all want to sit there and lift? And so I have to build in scalability. So I love, in this case, Tom's approach to this for a second. Because Tom's approach, in my mind, and I would say like a close second is probably Vivian, but what I love about Tom's approach there is he's saying, look, why don't you use a variable that means something? Exactly, Tony. I love subscript. If Draymond is a D, then I'm going to say his first lift, his second lift. And it doesn't get more idiot-proof than that. And that now gives me all the time in the world to add as many other people as I want, as many lifts as I want. And I just want us to start to see this is what I would generously grade myself with an A+ translation. Sentence number 2. I'm never reading sentence number 1 again because I just translated it. If twice the weight of his first lift was, pause at the verbs. Twice the weight of his first lift, 2D1, verbs tend to be equal signs, 300 pounds, more than, add, the weight of his second lift. What, you hit those question marks, slam those brakes, make sure you're reading it, was the weight in pounds of his first lift. Basically, what's D1? Like, this should be what's on your page after, in my opinion, that initial read. I ain't going back to reread this. I don't need to. Now this is just 2 equations, 2 variables. Can you get it done? Should take you, I don't want to say seconds, but kind of seconds to start to execute on this. Now, I personally prefer the elimination method. I'm not so big on substitution. All I got to do is say, hey, I see this, I know they drop when I add them, because basically I can subtract them off. Your mind has to start racing ahead a few steps, and that's because you start to understand math on such a high, deep level that you're not doing the math. So again, I don't want to ever lie to be like, oh, I keep telling you it's not a math test, so you don't need to know math. What? Hell no, you gotta know math. But you gotta know math so well that on principle alone, you kind of refuse to do it. That's what I want you to start to understand. So here I see 3D1 on the left, adding them up, then I see 750 plus 300 on the right. Now you might look at that and say, well, dude, you can't add that to get to 1050? You do suck at math. I say, no, I can add it to get to 1050. That's not that hard. I don't suck that badly. But if you start asking me to divide 1050 by 3, I kind of do start to choke a little bit because I do suck at math. That's a big number. The bigger the number, the bigger the mistake. Plus, I'm constantly trying to think about how can I make my life easier? How can I make my life better? And when I start to see the gift from the GMAT gods that 3 is a factor of 75 or 3 for that matter, then I realize, oh, I could just start to be a little bit counterintuitive and start to simplify. So really a 750 is a 250, 300 is really 100. Add those things up and I'm at 350. So what does that make it? Sucker answer choice E. D, of course, one of the 2 that I was happy to gamble with. Is any of this coincidence? It never effing is. And that's all I want you to start to understand. Like, so to me, this question, what am I taking away from it? Oh, the answer is D? You're not learning shit. You gotta start to appreciate, I ain't rereading on this thing. I'm learning how to translate properly. I'm learning how to execute quickly, including but not limited to being counterintuitive in the process. But maybe above all else, learn how to effing gamble. This is something that's going to be very important as we go through this course in here, because I'm telling you right now, everybody's guessing on test day. If right now you're saying, that could work for someone else, I ain't worried about that. I'm going to learn how to do this the right way. You're delusional. 99ers guess as well. You'll be the guy guessing 1 and 5. You will be retaking the test. You don't want to be in those shoes. All right, with that, let's go ahead and take our first break, folks. Let's put 5. We're running a little late, but I think we'll kind of slowly catch up. Let's talk when time's up. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get back into this next section involving exponents and roots. I think exponents and roots are difficult concepts for a lot of people. Obviously, they're abstract. They can involve large and weird numbers, but your job is to keep in mind a few guiding principles that the skill builder's obviously laid out for you. First, learn to find common bases. So important, especially as you start trying to solve some of these classic GMAT-style math questions. Second, learn how to factor / multiply. Create multiplication out of addition or subtraction. Finally, look for patterns. Patterns are everywhere. You got to be on the lookout for them. So with that, then, I want to take a look at this first question here. I think this is a good question. This is going to, for some reason or another, become the truly most difficult question that we've seen thus far. Some of you will not think of that factorial question as being the first difficult question. You will think maybe this is the most difficult or the first truly difficult question. And I would say to you, this is actually way easier than the factorial question. But the polls are going to tell me I'm wrong. Why? Because I think a question like this tests you on actually a number of different concepts. And that's the way the test starts to become more difficult for you. They don't just give you, here's a question testing you on one skill. They give you a question like say this and test you on 3, 4 different skills. And if you suck at any one of those, you start to suck at the question itself. And so if, as you're going through this journey on your other side of this camera, you're not properly diagnosing what it is you're sucking at, you're going to start to have a tough time getting better at it. And to me, you know, by way of analogy of sorts, it would be like, hey, going to the doctor and being like, yeah, doctor, I don't know, I don't feel good. Can you make me feel better? And that's all you tell the doctor, it's not going to be very helpful. Because like you get a question wrong like this, you might be like, oh yeah, I suck at quant. How's that helpful to anybody? Well, no, I suck at algebra. Maybe you do, but that's not good enough. It's like, oh no, just my midsection hurts. Doctor's still going to look at you like, what the F? You gotta work with me here. So you got to get really specific. And I would argue on this question here, if you can't start to see the 3 different things that are being tested, you're not starting to learn yet to think like the test maker. You've got to start to look at these questions in a different light, not just in that reactive, let me just try to answer the question that's been asked, but be hungry, go after this, tear it apart. Let's put 2 on the clock, let's get this done. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question. Not a bad job on this question right now, but that doesn't mean we all did it the right way. And I will argue, of course, the right way is going to be what I start to lay down here. I'd like to think that a lot of what we're doing in here is best practice type material. So as a result, try to be emulating as much on your scratch pad. So on this question here, if you wrote down this initial equation onto your yellow pad or wherever you're doing your work, ask yourself why. What did you accomplish? I would argue you probably accomplished very little, if any. After all, you already know what your job is. If I've got base exponent, I know I just got to get base exponent here, 3's and 5's on the left-hand side. 0 value was added by putting this down on your paper pad. Let alone, I know for a fact some of you made your old junior high teachers very proud as you kept rewriting it very nicely. You got to line up the equal signs and show that great penmanship. Hell no, you accomplished nothing other than wasting more time, more ink from your dry erase marker, more yellow pad from your dry erase yellow pad, and the worst possible thing, one of the worst possible things that could happen to you on test day is you got to raise your hand in the middle of a section and ask for more scratch pad, please, because you didn't properly manage what you have. And then you start to hyperventilate because a guy ain't coming over to give you what you need, and then all of a sudden you're like cussing him out instead of focusing on the question on the screen in front of you, and you derail. Don't let it happen. Stop wasting your damn yellow pad. So when I look at something like this, the very first thing is not even going to be the 75y 27 2y plus 1 that goes on my pad, because I know what I'm supposed to do, which is start by getting those common bases. Breaking these numbers down into what? 5's and 3's. And if you notice, 75, 27, where are they? On that 15 by 15 grid. And thus, you're not factor treeing this. You say, oh yeah, 75. 3 5 squared y, 3 cubed, 2y plus 1. And that to me is the very first thing that goes down on your pad. Now check it. You are done with the first skill, which is the arithmetic breakdown. Skill number 2 now. Start to exponent this out, meaning there are a lot of exponents here. You got to execute the formulas that you know. So if I have base exponent, that means exponents get brought in. Bring it in. Don't rewrite this. If I have base exponent, that means multiply across. You learned that in the skill builder. If I have base exponent, that says add the exponents. So this becomes 7y plus 3. And that is it. Step 2 is done. Now I go to my step 3, because now I have base exponent, matching base exponent. So now I start to equate them. So a 7y plus 3 is going to be the same thing as a 3 to the whatever. And then I have a 2y is going to be the 4. And now I say, hey, that means y is 2. Put that in. 7 2s is 14 plus 3 is 17. Choice E. Final answer. And what is the third skill that was tested? My ability to do simultaneous equations. Now, when you look at a question like this, does this look pretty damn easy on the board? I would say it does. There's not a whole lot of trickery in the mix. Like, there are plenty of questions where they will try to trick our asses. I don't think this is it. Because at some point they do ask us, do we know how to do some basic skills? But they ask us, can we do it with flair, with style? Can we avoid rewriting? Can we avoid these suckers where of time where we just start to factor tree everything? I got no time for that. And so to me, they want to see, can I start to combine different areas of my quant skill set together to stick the landing? You better believe I can. And so as you start to look at a question like this and compare, hey, did I write more? Did I write less? Did I get it wrong? Did I get it right? You have to start saying, hey, can I tighten further? Because I'll tell you this much right now. I gave you 2 minutes on a question like this, but for a 99er, you're starting to see the level of work that's up here. You're starting to see how little is being rewritten. You're starting to see how automatic this execution starts to become. This ain't 2 minutes. Save the time on a question like this. Let the other people spend 2 minutes on it. Save the time on a question like this and use it for something else. Pacing ain't linear. All right, with that then, let's get into this next guiding principle. So guiding principle number 1, if you're ever stuck, look to find some common bases. Okay, what if that don't work for you? Hey, maybe look to multiply or to factor. Because after all, you know there are no exponent formulas involving the addition and subtraction of them bases. You got to get into that multiplication mindset. Well, the only way to do that is with some factoring. So let's go ahead and get into this question here. Great question. Let's put 2 on the clock and then we'll talk. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. So this is an interesting kind of question. It's an interesting question because, again, I can understand how easy it is to look at a question like this and start to immediately piss in your pants. Say, oh my God, I better start figuring out what 3 to the 8 is. And start to do some law multiplication to get there because you don't have that memorized. And then, of course, put that on pause, add 3 to the 7, do all this nonsense, get to an answer, and then be stuck as F. Because why? There ain't no freaking answer that even looks like that. Doesn't even make sense. So this is where you have to remember, 99ers, we don't look at the answers at the end, only the idiots do. And start to catch yourself if that's what you're doing. Even if you do nothing else, take a quick peek at it. Because right now, as I peek at it, I say, thank you, GMAT gods. The test maker, you just yelled at me on this question. You didn't even whisper. You yelled at me as a 99er, saying, hey, dude, I got your back on this. You don't got to do a lot of work. And even more than that, you're yelling at me saying, hey, you have addition, subtraction. I'm getting you into a multiplication type way. You know how to get there, dude. You did the skill builder factor already. Like, to me, this is how you need to start to respond. It's a game. And, you know, it's like, I don't know, sort of like baseball of sorts. It's like you're the pitcher, test maker's the catcher, and he's just showing you the signs of what he wants coming down. Like, you need to be able to read them. You need to be able to respond, guys. I think that's important. So let's put a pause on this for a second. If I want to factor, and I should, after all, I see like terms of sorts. I see a 3. What should I factor out, though? What would be a good number to start with in this factoring process? Yeah, okay, good. So thankfully no one's telling me actually factor out a 3. You're telling me pick the number that's common to everything, which is clearly a 3 to the 5. And you're 100% correct on that. I could do a 3, but it's going to take a lot of time. I want no part of that. So now, here's what I want to be able to do. Figure out what goes in that parentheses. But you know what? Skill Builder didn't really teach me how to do that. Okay. Well, that's what this test is again about. Like, they know we could go left to right on maybe any given formula that we learn, but it's a pain in the ass to go right to left. We should still know how to do it. That's what a deep understanding allows us to do. Well, I don't got that deep understanding. Okay, dumb it down. Figure it out. Use another simple example to get this going. So I don't know how to do it with all these damn exponents. I know how to factor with some basic numbers. So let me just check it and see if I can figure it out. So if I'm like, all right, how about like a 2x plus a 6y, just as a quick example. What can I factor there? Well, clearly the 2 is common, so if I pull that out, I get to an x plus 3y. I think that's pretty easy to do for, I dare say, everybody in this class. So what did I do to get there? Well, this here, if I have a 2x and a 2, seems to be just take this, divide by that, and boom. If I have a 6y and a 2 and I got there, it looks like the same exercise. So basically, all I'm doing to get inside my parentheses is taking this and dividing by that. So if I have like bases, divide it, subtract exponents, that's a 3 cubed. Add it to a 3 squared, 3 to the 1, minus a 1, or a 3 to the 0, whatever. Now, if you look at this and say, well, I know the test maker doesn't want me to do that kind of math. This ain't a math test, it's a reasoning test. I'd say, you're right. He expects you to know it down cold. That's all on your grid. And thus, even if this is what you got, do not rewrite it again. Start to cross things out right here. So this is a 27, this is a 9, this is a minus a 4, which is a 5. 27 plus 5 is a 32, which is a 2 to the 5. Like, that's just knowing your 15 by 15 tables down cold. It's not sexy, it ain't glamorous. There's a lot of things we may want to do about the world of quant, none of which involve knowing the 15 by 15 tables, not knowing the prime basic exponents of it all. It's not time well spent, in my opinion. Not if your fundamental basics are kind of shitty. So now that I'm here, I'm done with this question. Question for you. What do you think is a sucker answer once I get to this point that someone's likely to pick? Because, they're just really, really arrogant. How do you think someone eats it when they get this far? Don't say C. Get out of here. No, no, no. Get the F out. I'm with Jason and Tom and Pew and Vivian and Umar and Lisa and Carl. It's choice E, gang. It's choice E. Choice C is like you need new glasses, Vivian. So I think the Nats, whether it be Nat Rogers or Nat Gerondak, are 100% correct of sorts. So question, why is E well, I don't even need to go into why is E the sucker answer. I mean, that should be like, this is where things get interesting of sorts. Like, no one should be picking C. I don't want to hear anybody tell me C is the sucker answer. Like, how the hell am I going to pick C if I get 3 to the 5 there? This clearly says 3 to the 6. Increase your screen font size. Put on some damn monocles. I don't know what you need. Nobody can pick choice C. That's like a bad move to make. Choice B, same thing. I can't pull an extra 2 out. Choice A, I can't get rid of a 2. Like, A, B, and C are terrible answers if you get this far. If you didn't get that far, fine. I get you picked A, B, C. You suck at the underlying math. Let's figure that out. But if you get this far, A, B, and C is a fail. You should be down to D or E immediately. And I get why you get rid of choice D, because it's not even a 2 to the something, 3 to the something. So, boom, choice E all day long. And then I want you to think for one split second as to what you thought the sucker was going to do. Because right now, you saw what contempt I had for anybody who would pick choice A, B, and C if they got this far. Because that's not a sucker move. So here, I like that you guys are starting to see this and feel it, guys. And that's fair, you know. Man, where are you? It does hurt, Stephanie. Love hurts, Stephanie, but I agree, this hurts too. So here's what I want to say. Where some of you guys, I've been trying to private chat you and it's been fucking radio silent. Like, are you not seeing me flashing yellow? Because we need to talk, man. There's some things that some of you guys are doing that I'm not finding acceptable. And so we need to correct some of that. But going back to this here before I go too far, those numbers are tiny. Oh, it's not the size that matters, Kylie. You know, no, never mind. I'm not derailing this. So here's the one thing that I would say. You do need that monocle, exactly. So here's what I would say, like Mr. Peanut. So here's what I would say. Choice E, before you pick an answer like choice E, guys, make sure you've earned the right to pick it. Like, prove it. Like, because I want you to understand something. I know there's some guy in here right now who's listening to probably every 100th word I spit out. The other 99, he's just doing his thing. He's got Sports Center in the background and kind of listens to me and then so on and so forth. And then all these managed to cobble together in the last 4 classes is, hey, there is nothing by accident on this test. So when he looks at something like this, he's like, okay, I see a 2 here, I see a 97, I see an 8, I know what the answer to this question is. It's 2978. When should I take this test? I'm ready for a 760. This ain't 2978, this ain't 2978, this ain't 2978, this ain't 2978. Choice E, final answer. Now think about that for a second. Obviously, a little bit of an extreme example, but do you really want to be the guy who gets a 2 to the 5, 3 to the 5, manages to do a lot of good shit in the process to get there, and then you want to be lumped in the same category as this guy? And pick choice E and be rewarded the same? Do you know how many times someone who has no effing clue on how to do something is going to pick none of the above? It can't be done. You have to earn the right to pick it, guys. Do not mail that shit in. And so here, clearly it wasn't A, B, or C, because we clearly said, it's missing a 2, got an extra 2, got an extra 3, dead. How was I so eager to dismiss choice D, though? That is the complacency that I'm speaking of. That should be burying you guys. It is burying you guys, but it should be burying you in shame. Because all you're doing when you pick a choice like D and you get this far is tell the test maker, hey, hold on, I'm dumber than you think I am. I really am. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Do you want to be there? You don't want to be there. You want to be able to do this right. You don't want an easier question. You want to show the test maker you can get here. 6 is made of 2s and 3s. Hell, we know if we had this, and you know, base exponent, that translates to base exponent. So it's like, well, if we know how to go this direction, we just didn't really remember how to go this direction, because after all, isn't that what this is? So, you know, we started talking about misdirection the other day in World of Critical Reasoning. They love to hide the right answer. They love to sell you on the wrong. This is straight salesmanship right now. They sold you so nicely on that choice E because they hid this. They gave you 2s, 3s. You were convinced it had to be 2, 3 form, but then they F you. And I forget who said it, but someone earlier on said, like, the test maker's not your friend, man. Just not. Just not. Remember that. Okay. How about this guy here? This is a good question. This is a real good question. Because, again, it's complex on first impression. What is the units digit 2 to 39? But dude, this is the test maker screaming out to me how to do this question. He should be screaming out to you how to do this question. He's shouting, hey dude, focus on units. But even if he didn't say that, and he's just like, hey, what is 2 to the 39? And all this stuff is like long drawn out answers. You still know from day 1, hour 1 what you need to be doing. Approximated or units digiting. Okay, I know what to do. Now, do you expect to have memorized 2 to the 39? No way. How does that work that way? Hell no. So you gotta start trying to figure it out, dumbing it down, establishing a pattern. But here's what I would say to you. I don't know what approach you're going to use, But if your approach is such that if I instead said not 239, but maybe 2 to the 3,999 as an example, whatever you do should take about the same time either way. If you were to say to me like, damn dude, I kind of got an approach that would work here, but F my life, I'd be dead right there, that means your approach isn't scalable, because these are the same exact question. And I want you to start to see that. Okay, with that then, I'll give you some time to dumb this down. I'll put 2 on the clock and then we'll talk. All right, guys, I like what I see here. I suppose I should have said there was a pseudo drop the course answer on this one. What would you say is a drop the course answer right now? Like, I suppose this might be a little bit brutal, but it's like, let's start to kind of be real on this. At least log off. What is the log the F off answer? Like, what are you doing today? Like, hey, yeah, I think so. Nueve, I like it, John. Like, this is not good, guys. You cannot be picking choice E. Let's talk to me, please. Tell me your fingers are the size of my thighs, and because your fingers are the size of my thighs, you didn't really mean to pick choice E. You meant to pick another answer choice, and I could live with that. But if you're like, no, dude, not only do I not know how to do this question, but actually I just took a random guess, then that's a problem, because it goes back to what I said, which is we can't be guessing 1 and 5. And it looks like I see the person who picked choice E is private chatting me now. I'm praying you're explaining it, and I just don't want to be there. Like, let's get this question wrong. I could live with this. I don't want to get it wrong, but I can live with it. And so that's all I want us to start to see here, folks. All right, so with that, let's try to figure out this 2 to the 39 bit. I don't know what it is. I don't care. I just got to start to dumb it down. 2 to the 1, 2, 2 to the 2, 4, 2 to the 3, 8. Do I see a pattern established yet? Oh man, don't encourage, when I was a kid long ago, I used to watch this, never mind. But don't encourage her is what I'm going to say. So, all right, I'm not going to say, yeah, that's what I'm going to say. So when you look at this and you're at, you're at 2, 4, 8, have any patterns been established yet? I'd say no. There's no patterns established yet. Keep going. Now, ideally, 2 to the 4 is already 16, but if you don't, that's okay. All you got to do is start to notice every time we go down, we're just kind of multiplying the previous number by 2. So in this case, 2 times 8 is 16, and I only want the units digit, so I'm putting a 6 there. Has a pattern been established yet? Nope. So I keep going. Now, ideally, I know 2 to the 5 is 32, but if I don't, that's okay. I look back at this and say 2 times 6 is a 12. And I care about the units digit, so I'm now back at 2. And now, all of a sudden, I'm starting to feel like a pattern's been established. 2, 4, 8, 6, 2. So now I'm starting to think, well, I think the next number should be a 4. But I'm going to keep going because I don't yet know. So ideally, I know 2 to the 6 is, again, 64. All these numbers are on your grid that I want you memorizing, prime base exponents. But again, if I just multiply 2 times 2, I get a 4. And now I feel pretty good. And I say, okay, this thing seems to repeat 2, 4, 8, 6, 2, 4, 8, 6, 2, 4, 8, 6. And I could count all the way up to 2 to the 39 if I want. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I'll get this done in 2 minutes. I'll pat myself on the back and feel good. But then if you give me this question, now I start to panic because I'm like, I don't got the time. No one's going to give me style points. So question for you, dumbing it down. Help me teach my 4-year-old daughter how to do this question. What can you tell me about a general observation you can make right here with what you got? It's about pattern recognition. What would you say? What do you see? Love it, Lisa. So I want to repeat back, And you guys are right, those of you trying to get me to where it needs to be and so on, but I need you to, we need to start to teach 4-year-olds first. I love it, Eric. Although I need to ask you, that's not really your last name, is it? Because if it is, that's hilarious. But if it's more your nom de guerre, then I can live with it in here. But because I noticed that on my roster too, by the way. But not to put you on full blast, but I think that's interesting. But Lisa, I think that's very important, because I think so many of us try to complicate things unnecessarily, and then we get overcomplicated immediately, and then we eat it in the process. So to me, if you can just think about it that way, and I think you did a great job. All right, fair enough. I was like, dude, there's no Linsanity anymore, but whatever. So that's funny. I like it. So, but to Lisa's point, again, not to get derailed here, but you did it great. You just say, hey, they just come in cycles of 4. Jerry would be proud. Exactly. So you look at this, you say, this every cycle of 4. And then from there, you go Hawks. Are Hawks even, what is Dwight Howard your future? What the hell? No, I don't even know anymore. So you start to realize, okay, if I can think of it coming in cycles of 4, let me look for a multiple of 4, essentially, and either add to it or subtract from it. And so a lot of you said, hey, 2 to the 40 would be over here. Back in, you're at 2 to the 39. Or if you said, hey, this is a 36, 37, 38, 39. And thus you get to choice D pretty quickly. That's all I want to say here. So let's rewind back on this. Do I want you to memorize this? Hell no. It's a waste of time. What I want you to just understand is that unit digits repeat themselves over and over in identifiable patterns. They're in one of 3 ways. They repeat themselves every single time, every other time, or every 4 times. So in this case, this is every single time a 0, 1, 5, or 6. Doesn't even matter what the exponent is. If the units digit is a 0, 1, 5, or 6, it stays as a 0, 1, 5, and 6. The ones that repeat every other time are the units digits with 4 and 9. If it's an even number, it goes one way. If it's an odd number, it goes another way. So for example, 9. 9 to the 1, 9. 9 to the 2, 1. 9 to the 3, 9. 9 to the 4, 1. So it just keeps going 9, 1, 9, 1, 9, 1, 9, 1, 9, 1. Every other number repeats every 4 times. So that's a 2, 3, 7, 8. Do I want you to memorize this chart? Hell no, I don't got it memorized. I ain't gonna ask you to do something that, shit, I won't even bother doing. I have this one memorized. This one, not really, but kinda. This one, definitely not. So all I do is I just look back and see what I did right. So what is it that I want you to get out of this chart? This entire question, for that matter? That 4x. But I didn't. I just told you how I did it. I just, very quickly figure it out. A lot goes through this little computer up top. But here's what I would say. Just memorize the 4x. Meaning, just know that, hey, at most, things repeat in cycles of 4. But usually, they'll tap out before then. And so as I'm trying to dumb it down, I will never, ever go to a 5th power. As soon as I get to the 4th one, I'm done. And that's all I want you to start to see here. All right, that's all I want to say here. I'm going to kind of skip this next problem because it's a whatever question of sorts, I think. It's like, as far as roots are concerned, you should know that roots are just fractional exponents. Does that mean that you want to memorize all these formulas? No. Like, my hard drive is small up top. I don't got capacity to memorize all these new things. Any day of the week, I'd rather have my 15 by 15s down cold. I'd rather know the prime base exponents before I'm sitting here going, oh, let me memorize these new root formulas. It's the same damn thing as the exponents. And if I know that, then why can't I just extrapolate to this? Doesn't make sense. So take a look at this question later. I mean, I don't think it's a great application of the actual formulas, but there's some style to be gained from this, and the book kind of walks you through a little bit of it. I want to wrap up the exponents and roots, and I want to get into the rest of the stuff next, which is quadratic equations. But this is a good time to take our final break of the day. So let's go ahead and put 5 on, and then we'll get back to work and then get into the rest of this lesson and slowly finish this out. All right, I love the comment that just came my way. Appreciate it. And again, at some point, we got to be humble. We got to be hungry. Let's keep up that part of the journey, guys. And all the fakers, you know how to exit stage left. Let's get into the world of quadratic equations next. This stuff is not that complex. I really feel like we probably did the most difficult math of the day, minus maybe the inequalities that we're going to cover in a little bit. A lot of times when we see quadratic equations, what does it come down to? Obviously factoring, setting things equal to 0, but it's multiplication tables. It's the basics, the fundamentals. So that's where you really want to have this stuff down cold. If, by the way, you know, you're a non-native student, I'll say, because I think, you know, not everybody learns to do these types of equations, to solve them this way. There's no need to learn how to do it this way. Like if you being you, again, it's like what I said in verbal, you being you can get the toughest questions right with not a lot of time being burned off the clock. I don't care how you do it, do it. But if that's not you, then learn how to do it a different way, that's all. And for, you know, most, I think most American students, we learn how to do it this way, then okay, this is what we do. What times what equals this, that adds up to that. Okay, that's just, do I know how to multiply and add? That's all. And then of course, once I have two things multiplied together to be 0, you know one of those must be 0. Both could be 0, you don't know, but one must at least be 0. And then of course, you start to realize, oh yeah, there's some common algebraic equations which we'll see here shortly. If you suck at this, all you do is you type into Google, hey, common algebra, first of all, it's quadratic equation, factoring, worksheets, drills, hit enter, knock yourself out. Same thing with the common algebraic equations to come as well. So I want to take a look at this question here. I think this is a great question. This is a great question because it captures so much of what I think that GMAT is truly all about. This question is from the official guides. It says if 4 is one solution of the equation x squared plus 3x plus k equals 10, where k is a constant, what is the other solution? This should not seem like a tough question to anybody right now. Instinctively, you should be thinking, you've given me one value of x. I know that you're asking for the other value of x. The problem is I got this k in the mix. So all I got to do basically is just plug in that 4, solve for k, then rewrite it, and then factor it and get to the other value. I could do that, and I could do it in less than 2 minutes. I'm on the road to the 99. Well, here's the thing. When you read the official guide explanation, that's exactly what they show you to do. And then you convince yourself that I did it their way, so I must be doing it right. And I can tell you right now, if you do it that way, you have nothing but drywall in your nostrils and probably some sort of lung disease being developed in the process. That is not a good way to go. It gets you no style at all. Even if you do this in a minute, minute and a half. You have to be saying to yourself, if I understand quadratic equations on a deep level, then I start to realize that this k is a bunch of bullshit. And I actually don't even need to solve for k to get this question done. So here's what my ask of you is going to be. Do this question. Do not solve for k. My hope, maybe it's misplaced, but my hope is that everybody in here knows how to solve for k. For me to do it right now would only reinforce a really shitty way to do this question. I'd rather get this question wrong than show the world I'm a monkey that knows how to do week 2 substitution and solving. Like, I don't need that skill. I'll take that for granted right now. What I'd rather start to do is condition myself to do these questions the right way. slowing down to speed up, having a deep understanding and being able to demonstrate to the world that this ain't a math test, it's a reasoning test. And I understand the math so well on this test that I ain't going to do the math that many people, especially the clown in the cubicle next to me, would choose to do. Because this ain't a minute question, this ain't a minute and a half question, let alone a 2-minute question. This is legit like a 10-second question. And if I can do that in 10 seconds, man oh man, does that truly set me up for the path to the 99? So, let's put a minute and a half on this question to come up with that 10-second solution. That's what I want to see here. Let's talk when time's up. I love the comments that are continuing to come my way when I dub the real quote of the day too. I think some people just don't have an honest, introspective way of studying. They just bullshit themselves. And then, it's like when you were kids, it's like, oh, if you cheat, you only cheat yourself. And I was like, bullshit. I get good grades. I get to where I was like, okay, fine. But at this point in the game, I think it's very legitimate. It's like, dude, you try to cut corners in this journey. You try to mail it in. It's like the only person who's getting F at this point is truly you. So just kind of keep that in mind. So when you see weakness, I would get excited. I wouldn't just pray. Like I talk about praying to the GMAT gods a lot in here. There's one thing I never pray to the GMAT gods for is like make my weakness not be a weakness anymore. Prayer is going to go unanswered there, folks. But what I love is this question that was posed. And again, I get this question. I think it's a common question, and I understand it, especially like on a question like this. So let me say what I think. Again, this is an opinion. I think as you're a 99er, exactly, Carl. As a 99er, a lot of things are going to seem easy to you because you're good at pretty much everything. Does that mean on every single question I'm like, I got this answer in like 10 seconds. Is it a sucker? Hell no, I'm a 99er. I'm supposed to get these types of questions in seconds. But let's say this ain't question 13, because actually 13 is not fair. Let's call it question 3. Question 3, the first few questions, exactly. Exactly. So the one they probably, I don't remember it now, but they probably even had some cheating in that movie Mean Girls at some point, but maybe not. So the one thing that I would say as we look at this is like, the first few questions, I think it's like about 10, is always used as some sort of baseline assessment of what your skill set is, whether it's in quant, whether it's in verbal. And so, the first few questions aren't particularly tough, especially as a 99er. And so if this is question 3 and I come to the answer in 10 seconds, I'm not going to be so arrogant as to be like, boom, there's my final answer, but maybe I'll spend another 5 more seconds or 10 more seconds just making sure, especially because the questions are early, you don't want to have no false negatives. Like there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. Stay confident, don't go arrogant on me. But if this is not question 13, and instead it's like question 31, and I'm a 99er, I don't typically get like 10-second questions as question 31 as a 99er. You don't. And by definition, you're looking at probably the 99.9 percentile level question. And if you're getting in 10 seconds, something ain't right. You're being too arrogant. So there is a little bit of, as you're going through the adaptive test of it all, a good understanding of where the question's coming. If it's earlier, it's probably easier and that's okay. But if it's starting to be later and you're dismissing questions that quickly, you have to start to ask like, hey, are you really that good or not? But then in here, I can go out on a limb and not really go out on a limb and saying, hey, a lot of you mofos ain't 99ers yet or even remotely close. And that's okay. We're in freaking week 2 of the course. Yet, poll opens up. First thing in the poll is my sucker answer. And I know that didn't just come to you right when the poll opened up. You've been sitting on that shit for a minute. You've been waiting for the poll to open so you can get in there. Hey, dude, that's a problem. Because again, I can't teach arrogant. It's very hard. Nobody can, truly. And so those are the kinds of things where you just have to have a little bit more restraint as you go through and say, hey, what is the trap on this? What is someone likely to pick? If that doesn't even cross your mind, you're not thinking like the test maker by definition. You're just in the mode of just being able to answer questions. And maybe on test day you'll do all right. I'm not saying you won't. But what I'm saying is you increase your odds, I don't want to say infinitely, but I'll exaggerate, say infinitely, by just approaching the mindset of, hey, let me understand let me understand really well how this test is written inside and out, backwards and forwards, to the point where I can deconstruct this on a moment's notice. And when I can do that, and I can do that routinely, I know what the results are going to be, and they're going to be good. And that's all I really want you guys to start to understand. All right, with that then, let's get into this question here, because this question could be made a lot more difficult if they really wanted to try to trap people, but they were generous, they were kind. What is the one term I need to focus my attention on here? And it better not be K, but something else altogether different. Because if I could pick up on that, this is, like I said, a 10-second question. What did you see as a 99er in training? Yeah, very nice. Let those stream of 3 X's roll down, guys. Because again, think about what you're supposed to do with a quadratic equation. You're supposed to set it up equal to 0. Okay, well, what are you going to do? Factor this crap to see what adds up to that? Okay, I get that. Good news is you already know 4 is one solution. Now you got to say, okay, what am I going to put over here that with a -4 gets me to a +3? This isn't hard. A +7. Like, in my opinion, I wish there were a +7 here. I wish someone would have thrown that in there, because I know I would have weeded some of you out, because you would have gotten this far, but then you're too busy celebrating before running through the tape. You've got to stick the landing. So to me, of course, you got to set them equal to 0. Choice A all day long. Is the official guide explanation going to walk you through this? Hell no. You ain't going to beat the test maker by playing by his playbook. You got to be thinking on a deeper level. And to me, this is a classic example. I love that you guys are seeing this. All right. If you can't factor and you kind of suck at factoring, and thus you want to fall back on the quadratic formula, not a good move is what I would say. Because my guess is, if you suck at factoring, how the hell are you going to be able to pull off some squaring, some multiplying, some subtraction, some radicalizing, some plus or minusing, to some negativing, dividing it? It ain't going to happen. And thus, you should probably live in the world of the back solve instead. And back solving is a low-level strategy too. I'll talk more about that next week. But that's it. All right, with that, I want to get into some common algebraic equations next. So, obviously, there are certain equations that pop up over and over. Skill Builder started laying out some for you, the perfect squares, the difference of squares. You've got to have these memorized, guys. This is the kind of stuff that, if you have memorized, it saves you crazy amounts of time. And it's not enough to memorize them. Again, anytime I say memorize, please understand in parentheses, there's also and go look for it, damn it. Like, don't just memorize and be like, oh yeah, I've memorized everything, but I still failed the test. Well, how come you didn't see this here? Oh, I don't know. I didn't know I should go looking for it. It's like, what? So obviously you have the perfect square additions, the perfect square subtractions. It says you could FOIL. No, you cannot FOIL. Do not give yourself a free pass and say, oh yeah, well I can FOIL. I mean, they kind of said I can. No, you cannot. If you're FOILing a perfect square, you're effing this up by definition. These are gifts from the GMAT gods. Do not spit in the GMAT god's face when he gives you a gift. All right, with that then, let's go ahead and take a look at, and if you suck at this, all you got to do is, hey, that's good. Hey, dude, you're ready to be a lawyer in training. That's a good one, man. That's a good one. That's very Johnny Cochran-esque. Rest in peace, Johnny. So in this case, I like that. I might have to steal that one day from you, Nathan. I will credit you. No, dude, that is marketing at this point. Marketing and law, it's all the same shit. We're just marketing to judges or juries. All right. If you suck at this, all I want you to do is go into Google and type in, hey, dude, OJ was like the great. I was in law school during the OJ case, so for me it was like one of the seminal moments of my flash in the pan legal career. But OJ's good. OJ's timeless. Dude, that miniseries like racked up all those Emmys, for whatever, when they did that FX special. But here, as we get into this question, so what I want to say is if you suck at common algebraic equations, all you got to do is go into Google later and you just type in like common algebraic equation, drills, worksheets, get great at it, not good, get great. Let's take a look at this question here. This is a silly question in my opinion. It's not tough at all. So here's the challenge I'm going to lay down on this. Read it once, use one equal sign to finish it out from setup to execution, and get it done in less than a minute and a half. I'll be generous. This is less than a minute question for sure. Minute and a half, read it once, one equal sign only. It's from setup to execution. Let's talk when time's up. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. And again, 90% of you are getting this right. It's a ridiculous question, in my opinion. But here's a good example. Okay, I got this right in 2 minutes. I'm doing good, right? Hell no, pacing ain't linear. And that's the one thing I need you guys to just keep in mind from day one. So notice what it says, if the expression blah, 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 so write it as you read it. X squared minus xy over 5 plus 25 can be expressed by, those are verbs, equal signs, x minus 5 squared. What, question word, slam those brakes, is the value of y? Like, it's a word problem, we've translated it, there we have it. Now, what are we going to do? Well, I only want one equal sign from setup to execution. I could either sort of break this down by factoring it, or I could FOIL that, so to speak. Now, if I notice this is a perfect square, that's a perfect square, but this ain't double the inside, there's nothing I would really touch on this left side. So it's time for me to break that down. And the way I tend to memorize them, and if it works for you, I'd encourage you to do it. If you already got your way, then do your thing. But whether it's a sum or a difference, like I always go with a squared plus b squared immediately, and then I add on the 2ab at the end with either a positive or a negative depending on the sign inside the parentheses. So here I would break this down and say kill all that, rewriting it right here, because remember equal signs are expensive signs, I'm not wasting them. That's okay. So x squared plus 25 minus, because it's a minus, doubling that, and I get to a 10x. And then again, what I start to recognize is things on the left that are on the right. So this x squared is here, x squared is here. It dropped. That's an x, by the way. Sorry for less than stellar penmanship. Then, of course, I got the plus 25 here, plus 25 here. That drops. I've got a minus x. I've got a minus x. That drops. So now I'm left with y over 5 equals 10, or y equals 50. I don't know. Like I said, what's this testing? This is easily, I don't want to say a 30-second question, but it's kind of a 30-second question. I want us to start to get so hungry. Like, these are the gifts. Because check it. On test day, I don't care how many questions you've done, even if you're that idiot that's done 7,000 questions, you're going to see something new on test day. Unless you're going to need more time. And when you need more time, you're going to be able to pull it from somewhere else. It's questions like this, which are repeated over and over. Like, I love the fact that one of you is like, oh, dude, I love that units digit thing. I'm going to be like, I want to memorize that little thing. It's like, great. You will see questions like that between now and test day, guaranteed. Possibly even on test day itself. And so when you get one, you're like, sweet, it paid off. I had to spend 0 time on it, or very little. But you do that so when you get questions that are more unique, more challenging, you're ready to execute on it. Difference of squares, another very common algebraic equation. You got to know this down cold. Again, you add them up, subtract them, boom, you're at the difference of squares. But this kind of stuff helps you even in ways that, like, I don't know, complex calculations might start to look like, oh, I got to do some math. It's like, no, you don't. Like, if they were to throw, I don't know, 51 squared minus 49 squared, just as a quick example, you should be able to answer that in about 3 seconds. Now, if you say, what? I don't know 51 squared. I don't know 49 squared. It's like, neither do I. What else? Other excuses you got? Like, if nothing else, use units digits to help you. 1 squared is a 1, 9 squared is a 1, 1 minus 1 is a 0, 1 minus 1 is a 0, so please, GMAT gods, give me one answer with a 0. That would make it relatively small, because 51 and 49 are pretty small. But of course, if you've crushed week 2 in the skill builder, you know difference of squares. When you see a difference, squares, boom, add them up, 100, subtract them 2. 200 is my final answer. I don't know what any one of those individual numbers are, nor do I care, because the question didn't ask me that. And when the question starts to ask me these funky-ass combinations, there's usually a good reason, and it's to hook me up. And that's all I want you guys to be thinking about. So if you suck at this, all you got to do is go into Google, type into the your little search engine, difference of squares, worksheets, drills, hit enter. Like, it ain't going to be like site one, like, link 1. It's like, click me, man, if you need help on your damn GMAT course. This is the worksheet you want to work on. But you guys have that great Slack group that Sean helped start up or started up, and hopefully you guys are starting to use it, sharing resources with one another. Like, there are so many times that people just want to go all in and work on GMAT style questions when their fundamental deficiencies are not GMAT level questions. It's actually shitty 8th grade algebra. Go work on that 8th grade algebra then first. That's what I would say. Don't be offended that you end up on an 8th grade website and they're talking to you like you're in 8th grade. These are the skills you need, folks, to at least come in the door. Then after that is what you do with it. So with that, then, I want to take a crack at this next question. I think this is a great question. This question right here, I think, is, again, one where some of us have no shot at answering this question correctly. That's okay. We've been living on an island all night long, so what's going to be any different here? Here's what I'll say to you. Freaking take your own destiny into your own hands, man. Like, stop being so passive. Learn to do something with what you got, because you may not know how to do this question. But dude, we've been talking about units digits freaking day 1, day 2. We didn't talk units digits and critical reasoning, but what the hell, might as well have. Day 4, we've been doing units digits. So even if you don't know how to do anything on here, with just an understanding of units digits, you should be able to kill 2 out of these 5 answers immediately. So thus, in my opinion, if you find yourself in one of those answer choices, you're effing this up. Because you're telling me, man, not only do I not know how to do this question, which is acceptable, but I have no interest in actually trying to improve my lot in life, which is unacceptable. And so let's try to get this wrong, if we're going to get it wrong, in at least a respectable manner. So with that then, let's put 2 on the clock and then let's talk. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question. Love the comment that just came my way. I love the humbling aspect to it. I think a lot of people come to this GMAT journey with unrealistic expectations. Let's start with that. Like, when people say, oh yeah, I want a 7 something, as 90% of you did, do I think that's unrealistic? No, I think anybody can get a 7 something on this test. It's too easy not to, or it's too easy to do it, I guess, or whatever way. But do I think that 90% of you will get a 7 something? Not only do I not think that, I know it will not happen. Why do I know that it will not happen? It's sad, but I don't think 90% of you are able to express at their core the same sentiments that this guy is now saying to me. You know, it's like, man, a lot of you won't look at this as a humbling experience. A lot of you will look at this as just a blip. It's just kind of an outlier. I know how to do this. I don't need to worry about this. And every practice test, every homework assignment, it's like, nah, that's just an outlier. I know how to do this. Then the real test comes up and it's like, oh, 510. It's like, oh, that's an outlier. I'll retake it again. 520. Oh, outlier. And at some point you realize, like, oh shit, that's 7, something that I wished for. That was the only outlier. Like, everything was on the board in very clear writing. I was not destined for greatness. I thought I was. Oh well, mail order MBA program. Ravi, you want my application? Will you take my check? I'll take anybody's check. And so I say that because, like, look, I love the passion with which we start a journey such as this one. I can tell you right now, we ain't going to end that way. And it saddens me that that's the case. So if you're starting to see that you're not on the path to where you want to be, either adjust your approach or adjust your expectations. Just keep that in mind. So let's look at this question here. What 2 answers should I have eliminated immediately on this question if I knew that I don't know how to do anything other than units digits? Like, to me, what should I have been able to see right off the bat were just garbage responses? And it kills me that, by the way, I've got almost 10% of you there. So you guys are saying A, and that's for sure true. Because what is A? 10 to the 10? I don't know what it is, but it ends in a 0. 0 minus a 2 ends in an 8. But then what? If that's an 8, Omar is 100% correct. Great, Tommy. Like, 8 squared is a 4. Like, it ain't going to be B either. Be careful. Some of you guys are saying C. Don't say C to me. Because even though this is an 8, this will end in a 0. And the same thing is going to be true with D, same thing is going to be true with E. So in my opinion, knowing that this is a 1, 1 minus a 1 ends in a 0, like, you can be in C, D, or E. I can live with that. But I see people in the A and B world, and I don't like seeing it. Some of you have been doing decently well today, and this is definitely not the way I want you to go out. Some of you, on the other hand, are in the B world, and you've been kind of eating shit sandwiches all night long, and it's like, okay, well, you're not helping your cause right now. Because again, nothing else, you got to be able to do some units digits work. So this is stuff we have been talking about. So where am I at now? Well, this ain't good enough. I need to be able to stick the landing. Well, if I'm under a title of difference of squares, I got to look to bust out some difference of squares. Do I have difference of squares? I see a difference, I see a square, but do I have another square? Of course you have another square. You know 1 squared is 1. And even if you didn't know that, which you should, but even if you didn't, why the F are we going to be talking about difference of squares if there ain't even going to be a difference of squares there? So what's the bigger takeaway? Hey, anything with something squared minus a 1, difference of squares. Like, that's what I need to be on the lookout for, because they may have hidden it from you on an even higher level. I'd say look out for even powers differenced. Right? Because even powers can be expressed as something squared by definition, unless difference of squares might start to manifest themselves that way, like something to the 6th minus something to the 6th. Well, that's really just something cubed squared. So you could start to break things down pretty quickly like that. Either way, if I know I got to add them up and I got to subtract them, adding them up gets me to 1,000,000, because that's just the formula. And I got to subtract them, and I'm there. Again, just as a reminder, like 99ers, we don't panic and start doing brute force math, because first of all, long multiplications for losers, we talked about that on day 1, corollary to that is long divisions for losers. I just scan these answer choices and it already tells me what I got to be doing, which is somehow factoring, because I got multiplication. It's stuff we've seen time and time again today. To go from addition or subtraction to multiplication is just called factoring. So now I'm here, now I'm ready to end it. The only problem is none of the math looks like my math. So that means I got to continue to massage. How do I get 1,000,000 to 10 to the something? I don't know. I suck at math. Okay, figure it out. 10 to the 1, 10. 10 to the 2, 100. Do I have a pattern starting to establish? I think so. But I ain't cocky. I want to try to dumb this down and see, keep it going. So say 10 cubed is 1,000. Now I feel good. It looks like I just count up my zeros, get me to an exponent. I got 6 zeros, get me to a 10 to the 6th. Okay. Now what do I got? something expressed in 2 less than something else. Like, let that be your clue. I don't need to be like, all right, so is that 9.9998 times 10 to the something? None of the other effing answers look like that. Use the clues. They're yelling at us. Okay, so it's 2 short of something. That's 2 short of a million. Means it's 2 short of 10 to the 6th. We just did that. Okay, choice E, final answer. Is it complicated? I don't really see why. The math isn't tough. So why are so many people eating it? I don't know if there's a good answer to that. All right, with that then I want to wrap up this section here. I want to get into inequalities next. Inequalities I think can be tough for a lot of people. But that's because, hey, we kind of forget some of the basic definitions. Remember, if there's an underline, that includes the equal to aspect to things. We sometimes forget that the rules are exactly the same, except with the whole multiplication or division by the negatives. So here, just as a quick example, what you do on the left, you do on the right. That's the way it works. So 2x plus 5 is greater than 7, subtract both sides by 5. 2x is greater than 2, so divide both sides by 2, you get x is greater than 1. If I want to test that, I would pick a value greater than 1 and I'd plug it back in. So I'd say, okay, how about 2? Plug it in. 2 2s are 4 plus 5 is 9. 9 is greater than 7. Yep, that's correct. And this is an inconvenient way of saying that. Just again, that Algorian theme. But what's the exception? Well, let me introduce a negative into the mix. So then I say, okay, what I do on the left, I do on the right. So I subtract both sides by 5. I get 2x is greater than 2. Then I divide both sides by the negative 2. I get x is greater than negative 1. And then to test it, I pick a value greater than negative 1. So I say, hey, about 0. So I plug this in. Minus 2 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 5 is 5. 5 is greater than 7. And it's like, no, 5 is actually not greater than 7. I've effed this up along the way. And then I come back and I'm like, oh, yeah. Duh, there's that exception. Negatives gotta then flip the inequality. So I flip it this way, and now I test it again. So I say, okay, what's the number less than negative 1? How about negative 2? Plug it in. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. 4 plus 5 is 9. 9 is greater than 7. So, yep, harmony is restored. I've done this correctly. Almost ate it, but then, thankfully, I just double-checked and caught myself in the process. So just keep in mind, everything is the same, except. All right, with that, then, I want to take a look at our first data sufficiency question of the day. The rest of the questions we got for the rest of the evening are just all data sufficiency based. As a reminder, with data sufficiency, they don't care what the answer is to the question. So this says, is x greater than 3y? That's what we call a yes-no question. They don't care if the answer is yes. They don't care if the answer is no. They just want to know, can it be answered with the information you've got? Remember, it's about resource management. Don't go start spending the company's dime more than you have to. Get the job done as minimally and cheaply as you can. If you can't do the job at all, that's okay too, but at least show your boss that you tried. Like, these are things you got to be thinking about. These answer choices are fixed. They never change. You should have them memorized by now. If you're talking to me in week 2 about 1-2 TEN, that's a fail. Low-level way of looking at things. Instead, understand those answer choices flowing through you so you know exactly what each of them means. With data sufficiency, trap answers should start to pop out really quickly, very clearly. If they're not, it's frankly because you're missing it entirely, and usually it's straight up because of disrespect. So on a question like this, if you do not know, even before we broadcast the poll, what the most popular wrong answer is going to be, that's a fail in my opinion. I do not care if you know how to get to the right answer on this. This is a very low-level question. To me, it's like what I started talking about in critical reasoning the other day. Like, I'm much more concerned about starting to really unravel this test, be able to rip it apart, limb from limb, question from question, and starting to understand it. So with that, I'll give you a minute on this question. Let's talk when time's up. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. Now, you might be saying at this moment, dude, you gave us a minute to do this. You're an animal. And I would say to you, first of all, I didn't even really give you a minute. I gave you more like probably a minute 30 with the amount of time I took to kind of saunter up here as well. But you don't need a minute 30, let alone a minute. You could get this done like in 30 seconds. If you're starting to, again, be hungry and humble. But what kind of worries me on this is that a good number of you are, 10% as far as I'm concerned, are making some god-awful moves. So let's start trying to figure out what god-awful means. So let's start with this first one. What statement should I start with? One or two here. This is not an opinion, folks. This is a fact. Where do I begin this journey? You always start with the easier statement first. And thus, even if you're pressed for time, this becomes even more important as far as your analysis is concerned. Okay. So you're telling me, dude, you got to be all up in statement number 2. That's fair. If statement number 2 is talking about Y, never talks about X, in what world is anybody going to pick B or D, guys? How does that make any sense at all? In fact, you're now starting to fall into a real bad place, Jurassic World. That's possible. Like, in fact, when we get into data sufficiency in week 4, you have to realize that we're going to talk about models and data sufficiency, and this is what we would call a why are you here model. Like, you are so painfully obviously not sufficient that no one would ever touch you with a 10-foot pole, so why are you here? Are you here to help us or are you here to hurt us? Like, that's what our whole model is based off of. It worries me that 10% of you are like, what do you mean, why are you here? I actually thought it was sufficient. That's a problem. Let's talk about that. If it's a random guess, then kind of okay, I guess. But even that I don't want to be seeing, because how the hell, if you start with the easier one first and they're asking you a question about X, this has to be automatically eliminated. But let me ask you this question here. Once you're down to A, C, or E, and I can live with that as whatever wrong answers you're going to pick, what is the classic, most disrespectful answer possible at this point? The one where you're like, dude, how is this class not ended already? I could go on autopilot and I don't need to finish this shit out. I got a 760 waiting for me once I log off. Like, don't you know who I be? And what's interesting is, I'm private chatting with some of you right now, of course, and one of you at least is telling me, look, I don't know, I'm much better than I am showing in class. Maybe it's the nervousness, maybe it's the fear. And I'm like, no, I think it's just your complacency. And I look right now, and it's like, what's he picking? Choice A. He's like, dude, you gave me a minute? I needed like 15 seconds to get to A, man. Well, no shit. That's also what you're going to get as you start to go through this test. That's how they bury you. Data sufficiency is the trickiest question type of them all, in my opinion, in the world of quant, because you can justify any answer you want in here. You don't got to do any work. Oh yeah, there's enough. No, there's not enough. And you feel good about every move you make. What did you think the sucker was going to be if you're in choice A? B, D? Guys who should be dropping the course potentially? Hell no. Like, your competition cannot be those fools. Again, no disrespect intended. My competition is the 700 candidate behind me, and nobody else. And to me, because this ain't a tough question, this is like freaking I don't want to say a 500 level question, let's just say 600 to be generous. Like, the guy who's getting choice A is on the road to the solid 500. And to me, that's where it starts to come into the picture here, guys. And I'm kind of eyeballing who's picking choice A. Some of you who picked choice A are at least fessing up to at least A being the sucker answer. But too many of you who picked it aren't even fucking able to see it. And that's what worries me. Because you feel so good, your shit don't stink. I'll tell you right now, man, it stinks so badly. It's knocked out your sense of smell. That's the problem. So now let's rewind back on this. What do we got to do? Well, we got to start asking, why are you here? Why are you telling me it's positive? Well, because it's an inequality. Everybody knows the rule that, hey, when you multiply or divide by a negative, you got to flip the direction. So what's the test maker going to do? They can't ask you on that. Everyone's going to know how to do it. So what do? They mask it. They mask it with a variable because they know what you're going to do. You're going to start to assume things are positive. It's not complicated. But you don't know that. And that's the problem. Because if it's positive, yeah, you can move the y to that side. If it's not, you can't. You got to flip the direction of the inequality, obviously. You better believe choice C all day long. And, you know, is this a tricky question? Depends on how you define trick, folks. But if I want a 7 something, there is absolutely zero chance I can be in choice A on a question like this. That's all. Start to understand early. Now, what about combining inequalities? Obviously, the actual skill builder walks you through what you got to be able to do. This is just a pure executional exercise. Can I add? Can I get them going in the same direction? Do I need to manipulate to get there? That's all. You know, take a look at this question later. There's no, I'd say, trickiness involved. There's just, do I have the competence on the skill set? I want to do this one last question here because I think this is a good question. Again, this is one of those questions where I think it really is about respect, fundamentally. Hopefully you're starting to understand why respect is so important, but to me, this is all about respect. Do I have respect for this question? Do I have respect for this test? Do I have respect for this class? Do I have respect for this process? Do I have an understanding that not everyone's going to get this question right? If I have that understanding, then I'll probably make a smarter move than if I'm so head up my ass that I think then no one's going to miss this, because then you're that guy that misses it. So let's put a minute and a half on the clock. Let's beware of what the sucker move is going to be here, so you're not in it. Let's talk when time's up, and then we'll wrap this whole thing up. Hi guys, so let's go ahead and take a look at this question here. So let me ask you this, because most of you are doing this the right way of sorts, but I think some of you should be spending some time not even doing math, just understanding these answer choices, guys. Obviously, it's already a week in of sorts, technically week 2 at this point, coming to an end. I fear that some of us don't understand what these answer choices mean. This is very elementary stuff. I'm not going to walk through them all once again. We've already done all this before. But let me ask you this. What answer choices should you be down to immediately on this question without doing jack on this question? Just from an eyeball of this, you should be like, boom, it's either this or it's this. Like, what should you be thinking about instantly, guys? And this is where I think some of you guys need to have that. Good. Roy, Umar, Min Young Ish, Katrina, Kelsey, Carl, Natalie, Felipe, Nathan, Steven, Jonathan, Angela, Felipe 2, David. Great, great, great. Like, why is anybody not in B and D right now? That's my only question. And I see like 10% of you happily in other answer choices. Like, what the F is going on? As a reminder, this is a yes-no question. They don't care what dude, it's definitely falling. Dude, it's like, well, it's like 10 o'clock here on the East Coast. I'm tired. Well, fucking A, log off like an hour ago when you were paying attention. Watch the last hour when you wake up. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, this is a yes-no question. You know the answer is yes or it's no. They don't care if it's yes or no. And thus, when you look at statement 1 and statement 2, you always start with the easier statement first. Like, this right here gives you everything you need to figure out if it's a yes or a no. You just got to plug and chug them all in. Isn't that super sufficient right off the bat? Like, why am I going to spend more money in choice C on material that I don't need? Like, you're going to get fired on the job on day 1. And so you're immediately BD. You're like, all right, 50-50. Let me see where it falls. But this is now where some of us start to end up disrespecting this test. We start to look at it and we say, okay, statement number 1, x is greater than r, y is less than s. I don't really know what that means. Let me try to pick some numbers and figure it out. Let me look at a conception and go, let me make this big, let me make this small, let me see. I don't know, it just doesn't look like it's good enough. Choice B, final answer. And it's like, what? What did you do? When we get into week 4 data sufficiency, just like on the previous question that we did, it was a why are you here model of sorts, where an answer is so painfully obviously insufficient that you just got to ask one question, like, why are you here? Are you here to help me? Are you here to hurt me as I look at the other statement? Like, this is something that I'm going to call the respect model because I lack a better word and they don't got a word for it. Because then it's like, if this is so obviously sufficient, all you know about the other statement is it's going to be a pain in the ass of sorts. Because if it's just as easy, what are you looking at? A 200 level question? Who wants to look at a 200 level question on this test? Nobody. And thus you need to respect the shit out of that other statement, folks. Give it its time, give it its attention. And one thing that you should have learned in the skill builder is when you have multiple inequalities, you should look to combine them. So if I have x is greater than r and y is less than s, and I know that I can only combine inequalities when I'm adding, and I add when they're in the same direction, then I would look at this and I would multiply this all by a negative and immediately flip the direction. Quickest way to do it, I think, is multiplying by a negative. And now what am I doing? I'm adding. And what do I get? Statement number 1 is a very inconvenient way of saying this. X minus y is greater than r minus s. Question wants to know, is the sky blue? Statement number 1 says, the sky is blue. Do I have enough information to answer the question being asked? Hell yeah, I do. Ignore the fact that the answer actually happens to be yes. No one cares if it's yes or no. They just asked me something, and I definitely have more than enough information to answer it. I accidentally shot statement 1 in the face. Never again. I'm going back to choice D. That's where I should have been. Is that a tough question? Statement 2 ain't, despite all the A's and C's on the board. Statement 1 is. But is it really? Not if you do this algebraically. It takes you 10 seconds to do it. Now, if instead you're sitting there with some suspect approaches with number picking and conceptual, let me go big, let me go small, of course it's going to suck. Maybe you got it wrong even stumbling your way there. Don't do it. Stick to the algebra. It is idiot-proof, folks, and that's what you need to understand. All right. This is not good. You know, it says a good understanding is flip the sign when multiplying by dividing by a negative. Really? That's good? That ain't good. That's baseline. A good understanding is, I would say, you know, when multiplying or dividing by a variable, make sure you know the sign. Like, that's what you got to be on the lookout for. I wouldn't say best. I'd say a great understanding is look to combine those inequalities. I think when you have those multiple variables, multiple inequalities, that's what you got to be thinking, add. ever is a broad question, Gurpreet, I will say yes. I will say not on what we were doing, though. Definitely not. We will do some of that in the weeks ahead, and there's times and places for it. And frankly, the time and place for it is when the algebra is too tough. And I don't want anybody and their mother to tell me that the algebra on this is tough. The algebra on this is basic. We will see tough algebra. So yes is the answer. You should be picking numbers, but not on stuff like this. There's no reason to. It's too easy is what I would say. But good question. All right, with that, I want to wrap up the world of algebra here, folks. Look at this last line. I just want to comment on this last line. It says, algebra is inherent in most of the GMAT quant. This lesson/homework deserves a proportional amount of your attention. I cannot underscore that enough. Hey, most welcome. So make sure you understand that, internalize it, do what you got to do to benefit from it. All right, we're done for today. What's in store for us next week? We're out of sequence in a big way starting next week. So on Monday's lesson, it's reading comprehension. Reading comprehension doesn't really have a skill builder, but it is critical reasoning based. That's why I like to teach that next. So if you're sucking it up in the world of critical reasoning, it could affect you adversely next week. So try to tighten up some of your critical reasoning house. Wednesday's lesson is word problems. Word problems has a beefy skill builder, folks. Come to class having crushed it. It's a great lesson, in my opinion. I think things start to get real interesting from a strategy perspective starting next week. We're getting some fundamentals out of the way these first 2 weeks. Word problems are very algebra dependent. So if you kind of have a very sucky algebra foundation, start to work on it a bit overtime in the next week as well. It will pay off immensely if you do. Otherwise, you will struggle immensely as well next week. That's all I got to say here. I think for the most part, we did much better today than we did in arithmetic, which is a good thing. There are some people that struggled pretty mightily, though. That's a bad thing. You don't want to continue that. Those of us that did kind of half-assed today, not struggle city, but half-assed, it comes down to stop being so arrogant. I can't stress that enough. Next week, just as a reminder, not to put things in crazy perspective, but you do realize 1 week from now we're at the halfway point of the course. So if I'm not going to start changing my approach now, when the F do I plan to change it? Again, I'm not the one who's coming into this class saying I want a 7-something score. You are. And some of you guys are not on the road there. Some of you guys are on the road there, and it's great to see, and I love kind of pushing you forward on that front. Some of us are not. It's time to start changing, folks. Otherwise, we're hitting that iceberg, and it's not going to be pretty. That's all I got to say here, folks. Thanks. Sorry for running class so damn late, of course. Thanks for keeping it participatory and interactive and light. Enjoy the rest of your guys' week. Have a good weekend. I'll see you guys all Monday at the same time as usual. Thank you, everybody. Much appreciated.